Welcome everyone to tonight's school committee meeting. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ryan Vallon, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have consent agenda minutes from September 25th, 2014, oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read. Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. Thank you. All right, moving along. Interested citizens. Are there any interested citizens that would like to speak at the podium this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move to recognition. The first item under recognition is the Littleton High School National Merit Scholars. We're actually going to defer that. There's an event up at the high school tonight
Yes, that's right.
that a lot of the merit scholars are at, and that's fine. We'll just push that to another meeting, probably the next meeting, and they can enjoy the event up there. School reports, it says Bobby Morse, but we have a change in personnel. We have Ryan Vallon, who is a junior at the high school, who's going to join us as the student rep this year. So Ryan, welcome to the school for a first school committee meeting. Well, you've been here before, but there's a sitting on this side of the table.
He's a weak man.
Yeah.
So
Were you here the last one?
Yeah.
Oh, you were, sorry. So, yeah, all right, excellent. Okay. All right, so school report, what do you got?
Well, I sent an email a little late, so I didn't really get a whole lot. Dr. Branco told me that in a couple weeks they're doing the 7th and 8th grade spooky dance. Spooky dance is social, if I'm correct. I know the high school, we have a hypnotist show benefiting the current senior class. And I got some sports updates. Boys soccer, their record is 7-3-3. Their last game was a loss 2-1 at Maynard yesterday, and they're home next Wednesday, October 15th, versus Narragansett. Girls soccer, their record is 8-2-3. Last game was a 1-1 tie at Bromfield, and they're playing tomorrow home versus Maynard at 3:30. Field hockey, they are 6-2-2. Their last game was a 0-0 tie at Narragansett yesterday, and they're playing tomorrow at Clinton at 3:30. Boys cross country, their record is 2-2. Girls cross country, they are 4-0. Golf is 10-4. Their last win against Narragansett. And football is 4-0. They have a game tomorrow versus St. Bernard's. Their last win was 44-12 versus Narragansett.
That's a home game, right?
Yeah.
It appears that all the team sports are angling to make the playoffs again this fall. I don't think anybody's going to get excluded from the playoffs, so that's a sign of a strong program for all those teams to make it like that. So good job. Right, that it?
Yep.
one last thing, homecoming
Yes.
dance upcoming October 18th.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, and then we have third item under recognition. Littleton was ranked in the top 10 best school districts for your buck in Massachusetts. Mr. Clenchey, do you have any more information on that?
Well, yeah, just a few statistics. When you look at how we were ranked, you look at college readiness, MCAS scores. 97.9% of our students, grade 10 MCAS, scored advanced proficiency, something to be very proud of. And when we look at housing costs, et cetera, you can go on the site and take a look at everything, but they looked at housing costs, MCAS scores, graduation rates, and combined this data together and came up with a gem, so to speak, for an affordable cost. So we're very proud of this accomplishment, and we look forward to many more accomplishments as time goes on. And the only other addition to that would be the high school was named a commendation school, not accommodate, but a commendation school for the second consecutive year. And it's important that people realize that the criteria used to determine whether or not you fit into that elite league, so to speak, is very similar to the blue ribbon criteria that's used nationally to determine blue ribbon schools. So again, a very proud moment for us, and it's important to remember that those accomplishments are not done in isolation. It's a result of accumulation of work right from pre-K through grade 12. I'd like to commend the staff, students, and parents for a job very well done. A very proud moment for us as Littleton with two very positive things in the last week.
Any of the school committee members have any comments on those?
No, it's just awesome. When I get a phone call from my mother saying, "Way to go,"
Did she call you, or did she call to talk to your kids, tell them good job?
I was proud of you, Michael.
No, it's good. It's, people can quibble about different ways of measuring success, and there are a myriad of ways of doing it, and I don't think either one of these would be considered the perfect or one that would stand alone on its own, but when you accumulate these over time, you can see a trend that indicates that, while we're always looking to improve and be better than we already are, we're in a good spot, and I think that's reflective of the community, so that's important, so that's good. All right, presentations. The first presentation tonight is on progression of initiatives linked to the 5 standards contained within our strategic plan.
And we're going to start with Shaker Lane. And what we're doing tonight, excuse me, is taking a look at some of the school initiatives that are being done under the umbrella of our Vision 2020 plan. And as we've talked about in the past, last year was the first year of the plan. We actually started to actualize it in March, so we haven't had a lot of time. This year, the challenge is going to be to take a look at this plan at more of a macro lens in terms of, we're going to look at the 5 standards and what kinds of things can we look at that aren't extremely detailed and specific to each school. The first one, in terms of curriculum assessment and instruction, MCAS scores will be the logical thing to look at. And I'll talk a little later on tonight about NWEA scores that we're going to be looking at this year. And with those 2, we're in a pretty good spot to evaluate that standard from year to year. I've asked the school principals to work with their staffs and their school councils to come up with some ideas in terms of what do we look at in a macro lens. And what does that mean? It means that when you do or carry through all your initiatives, is there some way of looking at their effect in terms of the totality of accumulation? And that's what we're trying to find here. It might be a survey every now and again, but we all know that surveys are only so effective, and we don't want to start administering 10 surveys a year because the results, unfortunately, won't give us a lot of information throughout time. But surveys do have a place in the grand scheme of things. So I'm not going to say much more until Rich gets started because he's probably afraid that I'm digging into his time. Technology standards.
Or by topics.
Well, I won't do that. I won't promise, but I'll try not to do it. Standard 5 in technology, I've distributed ISTE standards, international standards, to the administrators, and they coincide with national standards. And they've been reworked, which is really interesting, because years ago you'd look at these standards and it would say, can a student do a spreadsheet? Well, it goes way beyond that now, and I'll share those standards with the school committee later on in the year. But what I'd like to do for that standard as we move forward is have the staff at the end of the last grade of the school do a tally in terms of where we are at with those standards in terms of mastery prior to going on to the next school. I think that'll be a good target. And of course, we're always open to suggestions from the school committee. So exciting as we move forward with the strategic plan or Vision 2020. Having said that, Rich, I'll turn it over to you.
Nice to be here again. I always like getting up here and talking about what we do at Shaker Lane and the accomplishments that the staff and students make. As Kelly said, we're going to start with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And some of these things you're going to see carry through both from Shaker Lane into Russell Street and hopefully into the middle school and the high school as well. This year, K-5, we chose to pilot the Journeys reading program. And I think it's significant that the reason that we chose the Journeys program to pilot, and we have 2 teachers at each grade level, K-5, working with that program this year, is because of the rigor of the program. Because we found that program to be more rigorous than other reading programs that we looked at. So we're really looking forward to seeing what the results of that pilot are going to be sometime in the spring. We still have our other classes at all of our grade levels using the Treasures program that we used before. So we'll be looking and doing some comparison of student results at the end of the year between both of those programs, and also seriously looking at what is the difference in the rigor between the 2 programs to decide whether or not we feel that this is something that the district is going to move ahead with. Shaker Lane, we also adopted the 4th edition this year of Everyday Math, and that we are also finding to be much more rigorous than the edition that we were using before. The reason we only adopted it at Shaker Lane and not at the Russell Street School is because it wasn't ready yet for September when we were ready to go. That program is just coming out now. But at K-2, we did decide to adopt that program. And I have to give a lot of credit to Pete DeLaire, our new math and science specialist, for arranging staff training on that. We had somebody out from Everyday Math a couple of weeks ago, and then next Wednesday afternoon, Scott is spending time in Pete is spending time at professional development with our pre-K program and training them as well. All students in transitional to grade 2 also participated the past year in a 35-minute symphony math block. We're re-looking at that this year. We're going to continue to use symphony math, but we're also looking at other programs that we can use as well. I'll talk about the redesign of the computer lab once we get into technology, but that is affording us some different programs to be able to look at and some different apps to be able to look at that are there for students. We were satisfied with what we saw with Symphony Math. That's why we're not totally discontinuing it, but we're probably going to look at a model where half the students 1 week use Symphony Math and half use another program, and then switch back and forth to make sure that we're hitting everybody's learning styles and the proficiencies that everybody needs to be able to have. I'm going to move down because the other items you saw in the June report. We also started the MAP, as Kelly mentioned, adaptive assessments in grade 2. And what that is going to do for us is, first of all, it gives us instant feedback as to how our students are doing. Teachers can get on there right away after students finish the assessment and see how their students are doing. And secondly, it'll give us an opportunity to track student progress over time. It's an adaptive assessment. So we'll be able to look at where our students are going, and we're using that in grades 2 to 8 right now. So that's the first time we've had a uniform assessment that's gone through all those grades. It'll also give us, besides giving us the feedback as to where our students are currently, it'll give us target areas for where our students need to be able to go, and that's on an individual basis. We also adopted district-determined measures in grades kindergarten through grade 2. Kindergarten, we chose to use the letter naming fluency from the Dibbles assessment that we give to all students K-2, and also our writing prompts. We developed a new writing rubric, and we'll be looking at where students are going and how much progress they make in writing 3 times during the course of the school year. So we'll be using that as a benchmark, just as progress monitoring, just as we do the Dibbles. In grade 1, we chose the DRA because that's an instrument that we're familiar with. We've been using that for several years at Shaker Lane. That's got the developmental reading assessment. And we'll also be using a math fluency assessment that was developed by the staff. And in grade 2, of course, we'll be looking at the MAP, the NWEA. I'm going to go through everything, and then I'll stop for questions at the end, if that's okay. Professional development. Common Core writing, that's something that you've seen before that we've worked on. We've also had this year already ongoing training in the use of journeys, and as I mentioned before, we've had everyday math training as well. Last year, all staff participated with the help of Dr. Detweiler in Section 504 training, and we also did our ALICE training as well. We will be unrolling ALICE to our students at the end of this month with Pablo and myself, doing that in each individual class. We've also had training, of course, in NWEA and MAP, and our technology training continues to be ongoing. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to technology, but topics have included staff and student tool usage, applications, technology integration, most importantly, into the curriculum. Community and communication. I'm very proud to say that all of the teachers at Shaker Lane now have a blog. And that's really a pretty wonderful way of staff being able to communicate with parents what's going on in their classrooms on a daily and a weekly basis. If you have a chance to go to any of the blogs, you can actually, their teachers are using it both as a calendar events, they're using it to share information. Some teachers are posting, doing new posts on their blog every other day. So parents really have the opportunity to be able to find out what their children are doing in school on an up-to-date basis, which kind of, you know, those of us who have had children know oftentimes they come home and you say, what did you do today? Nothing. Did you have fun today? No. So this kind of gives an opportunity for parents to be able to get into that and find out what's happening as it's happening in classrooms. We continue to have Math and Science Visitors Week at Shaker Lane. We continue to have our community events, and I'm really, really proud of the strong volunteer base that we have at Shaker Lane. We have both seniors and parents volunteering on a regular basis at Shaker Lane. We probably, on any given day, have 10 to 15 volunteers in the building, helping do everything from copying and laminating to helping during writing workshop, during reading groups, recess, everything that they can possibly do. Climate and culture. And the topic of safety certainly comes in there. And again, we have to have the ALICE training and the implementation, which will be enrolled to students. Our preschool program, as you know, playground, excuse me, as you know, was renovated. We're planning for the renovation of the rear playground of the Blacktop area as well. And we've had, you know, as I said, an increased use in teacher blogs, Twitter, the website to highlight classroom and school events, and student accomplishments and activities. Under technology, certainly I feel that we're in a place where we're equipped with appropriate technological equipment. But more importantly, what we're seeing and what we're doing is integrating that technology on an hour-by-hour basis, day-to-day basis within our curriculum. We very much realize that technology is a tool. It's not the end-all and the be-all. It's not changing the way everything happens in schools, but it is another tool that students are able to use in learning. Staff mobile technology. All of our staff now have Macs, and that is just a wonderful thing because it encourages teachers to be able to work more at home, and it allows it to be more portable for them rather than the old desktops that we had that were recycled down desktops from the high school to the middle school to Russell Street and then to Shaker Lane. One of the other things that we're doing this year, we were fortunate enough to get a Chrome laptop this year, and that has inspired us to redesign our computer lab. So no longer, we still have about 12 of our desktops that were functioning pretty well that we can use, but no longer do you walk in and see the traditional computer lab setup that you've seen before where everybody is sitting at a workstation. We've moved around our furniture. We hope to be acquiring some new furniture at some point this year. But we've moved around the furniture of the lab. Now that sounds like a small thing, but what that has done and the way we've set it up is it's encouraged students to be able to collaborate and communicate on projects that they're doing in the classroom using the Chromebooks as a tool to be able to do that. We've just begun our student training on the Chromebooks because it's a whole different world because they're using the pad instead of using a mouse. Although you can certainly attach a mouse on and you can use it that way as well. But it's been really fun watching the students be so excited and watching them sit at tables and talk to each other about what they're doing and what they're learning. So even that simple redesign has caused a lot of new skills. You know, Kelly mentioned the NESTE standards and certainly ISTE standards, and certainly that's something that we're better able to work on this year in our lab. I mentioned professional development. Again, you know, we've done professional development with staff on blogging, survey development, video development, Google Drive with staff and students. All of our second grade students are going to have a Google account this year. We'll be using it to store a lot of student work and being able to share that with families, again, on an immediate basis as students are doing things. We're really very excited about that happening. So in summary, I think that we're making some wonderful inroads at Shaker Lane. I'm really, really quite proud of the hard work that the staff continues to do and how they continue to take on new projects and continue to change their teaching on a regular basis. Questions?
Sarah, want to start on this end?
No, I don't have any. It was thank you very much for the presentation, very thorough.
No, I just comment on, it was kind of in passing, but you mentioned that the students with the Chromebooks, the collaboration. I think that's fantastic.
It really is, it really is. It was the next step for us, and we're actually changing the name of the lab from being a computer lab to what I can't say yet, but we're working on it.
Alex?
Yeah, just real quick about the DDMs. What was the name of the DDM you mentioned?
Which one? Second grade, we're using the MAP assessments,
And what's the-
NWEA. In first grade, we're using the developmental reading assessment that's referred to as the DRA, which actually gives you levels. We already know what our target levels are for the end of first grade and second grade, and we have benchmarks set up through this school year. We're using that tool because we feel it gives us accurate information on our student progress, and it's something that we're familiar with, and it's tried and true. We're also using a math fluency assessment that was developed by the staff last year, continuing to use that. And then in kindergarten, letter naming fluency, which is a subtest of the DIBELS, Dynamic Inventory of Basic Early Literacy Skills. Along with, we revised our writing prompts in kindergarten and in first grade and second grade as well, but we also developed a new rubric for writing for kindergarten.
And do you feel that you're able to get enough information without sort of skewing unnecessarily what's being instructed in the classroom? It sounds like it's the same stuff being
Yeah,
that's a good way of measuring it.
Exactly. I feel we're looking closer at assessments, but we're looking closer at assessments at a benchmark level. I think that that's a significant, it's a shift in thought. Some of these things we've been doing all the time, but we're focusing more on it now. We've been using the DIBELS now at Shaker Lane K-2 for, I believe, 6 years. And again, that's a, longer than that? Okay. We've been, using that as a progress monitoring tool. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that and what I'm talking about, the DIBELS is administered to all students at the beginning of the school year in January and then again in May to track the progress of all students. But we also use it in between times as a progress monitoring device for students that are working at the below average and low average level as well. So we can go ahead and we can change the way we're doing instruction if students aren't getting it. We're also piloting this year in kindergarten a new math assessment that Pete Dallaire has been working with us on.
Great, thank you.
Mike?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the presentation.
The only comment I have is that I appreciate the information we got on the integration of technology and the changing use of technology that jives with what I would hope was happening. But I also appreciate the comment that you made about it being a tool and it, supporting instruction and not supplanting other methodologies. I mean, I think, we hear a lot about the use of technology at the high school and the middle school. I think we all are very comfortable with, how aggressive we're being, because those kids are getting closer and closer to going out into the real world where it's inevitable that they're going to encounter that day in and day out, and without those skills, they're just not going to be able to function. I think it's a little different at the lower levels. It's important and it's extremely beneficial used in the right way, but it's also a much more fragile group and it's easier to make mistakes. So I have no problem with us being more cautious and deliberate about how we do it. And I also appreciate that for the staff, I think it can be a little more, more of a dynamic change at that level than it would be necessarily at a history class at the high school. Well, we're doing research, whether we do it out of an encyclopedia or out of an electronic device, it's still effectively research. But down here, that's a little bit different. So, I would just like to know, and I feel like that's the message that we're getting is that it's being introduced on a gradual basis with an eye towards, informing instruction and not replacing, other ways of dealing with that particular population. All right, thank you.
Principal Bazidlo, Russell Street School.
Good evening, thanks for having us. One of the things that's nice when we do these presentations that I notice each time we do them is a couple different things. One of them is it's very, very clear how much our school improvement plans are tied to the strategic plan. And we notice that when we do our specific strategic plan, our school improvement plan presentations. And it's also very clear how much overlap and how tightly wound our whole system is. So you will hear overlap from the Shaker Lane presentation into the Russell Street presentation, and I think Principal Farrell and I talk often that we like to feel like we are one school in two separate buildings, so you'll see lots of overlap, you will see some differences, but I think it's nice, the more we present, the more we see that we are one district and we are progressing students throughout. So as we begin, you'll notice that Journeys pilot that Mr. Faraday talked about continues at Russell Street. In some of our classrooms, the preliminary evidence is showing us that teachers like it very much. What you'll continue to hear us talk about is rigor. We feel like the increased level of rigor is really nice, and we want to make sure that we're giving children reading materials and curricular materials that are really challenging. And so we're seeing that that's the expectation that they're needing to get to college and career readiness. And so this particular program is certainly providing an increased level of rigor. I talked last year a little bit about an Achieve 3000 pilot that we're rolling out. We'll continue to pilot that this year, and if you recall, that is a non-fiction online database of articles that gives teachers the ability to assign articles to students based on their relative areas of need, and it has over 13,000 articles in it of high interest, current articles. They're coming out regularly, so each week there's new articles. Students get excited. There's articles about a penguin that had no feathers, so they created a wetsuit for him, things like that. So they're exciting things that are current, that students are enjoying reading about, and we're getting to a point where teachers can say, these 5 students need some help with these skills, and this article targets it. And so we'll continue to pilot that this year with the hopes of helping students increase some of their skill sets with nonfiction literature. We're continuing at Russell Street School to improve our use of data. Last year we began an initiative where we created a full school database to be looking at so all of the information that we have internally with our internal assessments and our state assessments about how students are performing. And we created monthly at-risk learner meetings to talk about what we could be doing differently for students. So we'll continue that this year to be working with our data team and with our classroom teachers to be making sure we're doing everything we can do to help students improve. Our goal this year is to try to quantify, are we making a difference for those students? So last year we began this process and we began talking about what we can be doing differently. I think the next step is for us to be able to say, is the rubber meeting the road, or do we need to be doing different things? So it's the beginning of the process for us, and we'll be continuing to try to make changes there. We've spoken about the fact that Russell Street School has created a professional learning community committee structure. 2 of those committees last year were in core subject areas, and continued to make progress. Teacher-led progress in math and English language arts. We'll continue to have those committees this year. A big project that I'll present on at the next meeting is our standards-based report card, which was a giant project at Russell Street School last year. And as Rich talked about, online adaptive assessments have been a big challenge for us to undertake and to roll out for our students. A good one, but a big challenge for us, and it's taken lots of professional development time and lots of energy at the building level and at the district level to get into place successfully for our students. Thanks. Professional development. This is all the professional development from last year and from this year, you'll notice that if you just group it and think of it, for the most part, it included educator evaluation, Common Core, DDMs, Achieve 3000. Again, I would consider Common Core reading. We talked about Section 504 training, safety and security with Alice. We did a couple days of committee meetings that included the ELA and MAP committee, it included the report card committee, and included community outreach. We rolled out faculty mobile technology, there was training for that, and then this year, our early release days thus far have been focused on our NWEA MAP online assessments. So we do have a couple days of Achieve 3000 training coming up as well that are more in a grade level training-based format that are not on early release days, so that'll be coming up very soon. There's one in November and one in January, and we'll continue our building district-based and site-based early release day schedule as well. Oh, you're doing it?
Yeah.
You're doing it when I'm pushing the button, so it feels like I'm doing it? You're empowering me to feel like I'm being successful? Excuse me. One of the things that came out of the Russell Street School survey a couple of years ago was an interest on the part of parents for us to do, for parents to be more involved in the building. So we've made an effort through our community outreach committee to not only have more parent nights, but to try to do more parent education. So last year, the community outreach committee did a math and literacy night that was highly successful. That committee will continue this year, and we'll extend that, hope to extend that into some parent education sessions. I think I spoke last year that we hope to do some things like allow parents to participate in a morning meeting so that they can see what it's like for the things that their students are doing. Maybe invite parents to come in and participate in learning about Google Apps for educators and log in and participate in those types of things. So, you know, we'll be working with our PTA and our school council on creating the topics for those, but, you know, maybe a 2 or 3 topic educational session for parents throughout the year. Where teachers and others are involved in, trying to support parents educationally. So just for parents, not for students. So separate from a night like Math and Literacy Night where it's a family type event. Russell Street School has Spirit Nights. Basketball is our big one. That's a huge crowd pleaser, and we'll continue that. We have bingo night, basket raffle, those types of things will continue. Social action projects began a couple years ago, and they've gotten they've sort of instilled, and we'll continue those, and we hope to improve those each year. We've tried to tie into the community service hours that happen at the middle school and high school, so we're trying to get our students to understand the importance of being a part of their community. So each grade level does a social action project, and we're trying to help students understand that that's not always, collecting money for a cause, that often it's doing something with their hands or being a part of their community. And so each grade level does something a little bit different. One last year, students collected materials for a hospital and delivered them with the help of a parent to, children, pediatric ward at a local hospital, things like that. So the social action projects will continue. We participated with the help of Mrs. McGregor in the Littleton Tercentennial. Our students participated in the Time Capsule Project by reading the essays that had been written previously and then writing new essays to go into the time capsule. That was a very successful project, well received by all Russell Street faculty, and all students participated. And if you're following any of us on Twitter, you're noticing that more and more of our staff are beginning to tweet and get the good work that's being done at the building level out. So if you're not following us, follow us or check it out on the Russell Street webpage. ALICE training, as Mr. Faraday talked about, was a huge undertaking last year with the administrators and some faculty members being trained as instructors, and then coming back and training all of our faculty. This year we'll be rolling that training out to our students in a very thoughtful manner, developmentally appropriate for the buildings in which we work. Russell Street School rolled out Responsive Classroom. I've talked about several times in a full building rollout so that every classroom began a responsive classroom model. I was pleased that several classroom teachers took Responsive Classroom 2 over the summer this past year. So they took a full week a second full week of responsive classroom training. So they've now had 2 weeks of responsive classroom training to even increase their skill level, because they felt like the program was so successful and they felt like it was so good for students. So that program is in full swing at Russell Street School and is being heavily embraced by our staff. We reinstated clubs at Russell Street School to a huge turnout of students last year, to the point where we struggled very much to be able to honor all the requests to get everyone a club. We will see how that goes this year, as the due date was today. So we will be going through that next week to see how that all turns out. I mentioned tweeting, and I've mentioned committees. Technology over the past year has been a blend of hardware and software. We've been very lucky to increase our mobile technology for students very quickly in the past several years. We're at a point now where we have a Chromebook cart per grade level, which is going to allow teachers at each grade level to be very creative in the way they put mobile technology in the hands of students. In addition to that, we have an iPad cart that will float around the building that's used not only in class, but with some of our clubs. We've rolled out quite a bit of software, Google Apps for Education, Teach Point, Achieve 3000. Third grade is working on beginning keyboarding instruction for students. We rolled out mobile technology for faculty. I talked about the adaptive technology. I want to talk briefly about a brand new thing that's going on at Russell Street right now. Mrs. McGregor has begun doing what's called a Google Hangout, which has been very exciting. And I'm not super familiar, so I'll talk about it to the best of my ability. There's a couple other fourth grade teachers, Ms. Cunningham and Ms. Leposki, are going to be beginning a couple of these this week. Basically, teachers around the country have signed up to do these Google Hangouts, and the children in the classroom all get assigned jobs. And so some are communicators, some are researchers, some are runners, some are managers, and the class is Skype, and they don't know where the other class is. And so they have specific questions to ask each other, and it's a collaborative activity and a challenge to see which class can identify where the other class is first. And so, to Chairman Fontanella's point, it's an excellent use of technology to foster 21st century skills. So they're using technology, but the goal is for them to all work together, for the research, for the people who are asking the questions to get the answers to the questions, to the researchers to do research, to get that back to the manager, to get it over, for them to ask another appropriate question, and it's a buzzing collaboration of students to try to figure out where the other class is before they figure out where you are. And so it's a pretty unique thing that's going on. Heidi's been very excited about it. They've done 2 or 3 of them. There's some other fourth grade teachers that are going to try it with their students. And so as we talk about creating skill sets for students versus just building the content base, I think it's a pretty exciting idea. And it appears that there's quite a few teachers across the country that are participating in this. So just an example that's just begun this fall that I thought was unique enough to share tonight and highlight tonight. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
It'd be cool if you actually deliver a kid to the location. Maybe that's a high school level. Mike, doing?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. You mentioned the clubs were reinstated
Yeah.
at Russell Street. When were they?
For 1 year, 3 years ago, clubs were cut as part of the budget cuts during the big budget cut year.
FY13?
It was the year I got here, there were no clubs, so Steve would know better which fiscal year it was.
I think it was 13.
And so how many are back? What does it look like now? Is there?
Russell Street School, by contract, runs 3 major clubs and 5 what you would call traditional clubs. This year, one of the major clubs isn't being run, so we're running a couple more of the smaller clubs because we have funding to do it. So I think there's 8 or 9
Yep.
clubs or so. What we do is, because there's so much demand, we often break the clubs that can do it into 2 or 3 sessions. And so they end up being like 8-week clubs or so instead of full school year clubs. Mrs. McGregor's running a video game design club, and last year it had 112 kids or something wanted to sign up for it, so we had to try to break it up, that kind of thing. This year, Ms. Terpster's running a fun and game sports club, the folders like this, of kids that want to do it. So we do what we can. Sometimes we try to, if we have a little bit of funding left, try to run an extra session of something, but We only have a limited amount of funding for the club program.
The other question I have is, maybe it was a question for Principal Faraday, but with the technology being incorporated at such a young age, are they doing like security and safety things? Like, is that a part of what they're learning in the classroom before they get handed off the Chromebook?
We actually have begun doing that.
Yeah.
And teaching students digital citizenship.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we do a lot of that. You know, I actually just talked to faculty today even about things like, we did have some classrooms where all students with their Google Docs had the same password, and we were talking about, you know, that's convenient, but someone could log in as someone else, and now we're trying to figure out who did what, and, you know, some of those types of things. So along with the great things that come with technology does come a whole new world of making sure that not only are we teaching our students digital citizenship, but as adults, we're thinking of all the possible pitfalls as we're creating programming. So we do try to stay out in front of that. Our tech department is excellent, but I think that's certainly a valid question that we want to constantly be thinking about. You know, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, our filters are in place and those kinds of things. Students are safe when it comes to technology, but, you know, we want to be teaching students to be smart and those kinds of things. And there's more and more we can do. When I talked about those parent educational sessions, one of the ones we've brainstormed is a parent session about, you know, do you realize your child's iPhone is a full computer and exactly what they can do with it when they're, you know, sitting out in the backyard, you know, and those kinds of things. Because I think for some parents even, they're unaware of just how powerful that phone that they bought for their 4th or 5th grader is when they're not home if they haven't set up the appropriate parental controls. So I think it's a whole new frontier for the adults and for the students. So there is a lot there for us to be thinking about educationally.
And then the last thing, I think that Google Hangout thing is very, very cool sounding.
Yeah.
It's like a very modern day pen pal
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
Surprise. I thought you were going to Darryl. I fell asleep there. One of the things I wanted to comment on was, you mentioned rigor and challenging, which is great, and rigor is, you know, the word of the year. But you also mentioned the monthly at-risk learner meetings. I think that's key. I think that's fantastic. You guys are doing that, and then you're following through on that. And because a frustrated learner there's nothing worse. So, you know, the sooner we catch those kiddos and kind of help them to get back on track so that they can perform at their peak performance is fantastic. At back to school night, Rich, I really couldn't comment because I no longer have a kid at Shaker Lane. But
You can come anyway.
I didn't get the invitation. There was a lot of energy in the building. The teachers were excited to be there. They own their space, but it was very welcoming, and see a lot of passion there. I mean, I think every meeting we hear Heidi McGregor's name, you know, and we should bring her up to one of these recognitions during one of our meetings because it's always something new, it's always cutting edge, and not just her, but, you know, the whole staff. So hats off to all those folks. Lastly, I wanted to touch on, when you're talking about doing these parent meetings, whether it's parent education or talks, that kind of thing, I'd love to, I say it a lot of towns are doing stuff around us as well. Collaborate with other towns, you know, maybe 1 month we host something that is helpful to parents, and then let parents know if Acton or Westford or Shirley or someone else is doing something, just get that word out. Because I know a couple of years ago, my wife went to something at Acton and it was fantastic.
Right, that's a great idea.
So just, again, collaboration.
Thank you, and thank you for the compliment. Again, I couldn't be prouder of the staff. I say it every time I'm here. I have never worked with a more energetic or outstanding teaching staff, and it's all about the teachers, the teaching, learning. I say it every time. We couldn't be prouder of the teachers in the building. They're outstanding.
Thank you.
No, Mike caught the comment I had on the safety, because I think, you know, even the convenience of connecting to a Google Hangout, parents and the students need to be aware of how powerful that actually is, not just from the classroom perspective, but who might be at the other end of the Hangouts if they're not properly monitored in terms of what they're doing with it. So I think it's a key piece, both for the parents that may not be familiar with a Google Hangout.
Right.
Right. One comment I'd like to make is in terms of expanding a little bit on what Chuck was talking about, the community outreach, and this goes a little bit to what Rich talked about, the volunteerism that goes on in the school. I think that at Shaker Lane and Russell Street, that's where we get a chance to really show the families what we do as a district and get the investment required from their end to really make it as worthwhile an opportunity for their children as it possibly can be. And, Chuck, I was thinking like, oh, I'd love to see that Russell Street report. Oh, wait, I don't have a kid there anymore, so I'm not going to see one at home. I'll have to go get a special one to look at it.
You can
But-
attend Brady's.
But, so, you transition through. But I think that, for me personally, thinking about making the next leap as a district, the only way we're going to be able to do it is with parental involvement, especially given how much is changing, how we do things as a district, how it changes. If we don't empower them to be able to take advantage of it with their kids, then, we're only ever going to get a certain percentage of the opportunity that we would otherwise get. So I appreciate the fact that we're doing, I echo Chuck's comments, if there's other ways to send our parents out that, that we can't necessarily do or aren't doing that day, but there's something else they can do, I would encourage us to make that available to them so that they can decide if they want to do it or not. But the more they do, the better off we're all going to be. So it's great that it's happening, and as an administration, I think if we can keep focused on that and not lose track of how important that is, I think in 6, 7, 8, 10 years, we'll realize, wow, we really made a huge leap. And it'll be because of things that are happening outside the building at the home end. We talk about flipped classrooms and things like that. I think we have a real opportunity. It's exciting, but we have to be able to take advantage of it. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Branco.
Ron, I said something. Yeah, he said that was all set.
You're in trouble because I had time to write more stuff down that wasn't in the slides.
Awesome. Yeah, which brings you to the point, it's good to go Shaker to high school. We can go high school to Shaker some nights too, just to co-op Mark's opportunities.
But you also just
We
want to
might do
point,
that on Tuesday.
I do want to point out the fact that it's interesting to see that if I'm a principal for 20-something years, I also will know what DIBELS means and what, because all of those acronyms seem to just flow right off your tongue.
Maybe you will.
Junior.
I thought they were giving every kid a milkshake in the middle of the day. It's like, that's a good program too.
So, we'll start with curriculum instruction and assessment. Right off the top, the biggest thing going on at the middle school, as the school committee and the public knows, is we're doing a very comprehensive review of our science program. Thanks to the school committee and the taxpayers for funding that initiative for 3 years. We're starting our second year of that. Dr. Finity has done an unbelievable amount of work along with the science staff at the middle school, leading them through that. They are currently piloting multiple programs, as well as implementing $10,000 worth of 21st century equipment that we were able to purchase with the money last year, including an unbelievable set of probeware that's being used in the grades. They're piloting things like Flexbooks, which is an online web-based textbook. Say that 3 times fast. Flexbook, online web-based textbook. Open source, vetted out, research-based. The beauty behind this kind of a textbook is it allows the teachers to manipulate the content. So teachers who are real craftsmen of content aren't locked into the prescribed textbook. They start with an unbelievable research-based textbook, and they can drop their own information in there, whether they're extra PDFs, work assignments, assessments, YouTube videos, the like. As well at the upper level, she's piloting this with 8th graders, as kids discover and create content, they can be part of creating their own textbook and kind of leave that educational legacy behind. And it is a very cool thing. So we're piloting that in the 8th grade, and a couple more traditional hybrid web-based textbook programs in 6th and 7th. And then by the end of this year, our plan, obviously, as we told you before, is to try to commit to one that we can roll out for September. Massive amount of work, again, in a very small department of people working very hard. We are just starting the second bullet this year, where we're talking about developing a unified approach to teaching and assessing vocabulary. We've had a lot of change at the middle school from a staff perspective in ELA, so because of that, we're really ripe for getting our current ELA team all together on the same page, so to speak, to make that happen. And we're tying that into our educator SMART goals and to our site-based professional development this year as well. So I would imagine I'll be able to report some good information back to you at the end of the school year on that. As always, we do ongoing alignment and revision to our core subject curriculum as it happens in real time throughout the school year. Last year, we did pilot FAST program. We reviewed the NWEA MAP assessments, as you've already heard about from my colleagues, and we are right in the middle of implementing the first round of MAP assessments. And you've heard enough about them as they're an adaptive test and how we're going to use them for progress monitoring. But I have to echo what my colleagues have said about the power of having one tool to aid, and selfishly, for the first time, at least in the 5 years I've been here, to have one all-encompassing tool that we can really use effectively at the middle school to put our finger on not just where our struggling learners are, but where our advanced learners are. I have some fantastic anecdotal stories coming out already about how we have upper level kids who have reported that this is the first time in their school career that they felt challenged by a test or stumped by a test, because it adapts and adapts, and it goes all the way up to grade 14 and 15 and 16. And it is fascinating to watch kids sweat over that, and also watch them celebrate when they realize where they are. So, and then the next step is, what are we going to do with that information? How will that inform our instruction and our program? So that's kind of the stay tuned for the next report after, but I'm very excited on how we're going to get to use that data. At the bottom here, this 8th grade math skill drills and science, that's called SCISRs, speaking of acronyms, SCSR, stands for Science Concepts and Skills Review. I realize this is not the MCAS report night, and we will all be dancing through that together sometime shortly, but one of the things we're extremely proud of when we looked at the middle school data recently is the middle school was ranked 17th in the state out of over 400 schools in 8th grade math, 14th in the state out of 400 plus schools in 8th grade science. And if you've been paying attention, we were nowhere near there the past 4 or 5 years, obviously, in math, so that's a jump out of the hundreds. While we will obviously talk about the work that we need to do on individual students and on some of the other areas, I started my career in this district focusing on the exit skills of 8th graders, talking about kids come into the middle school, some ready for college and some barely ready for 6th grade. And our goal is to get them ready for whatever their high school experience is going to be when they leave. And so for me to see that kind of growth at the end of an 8th grade era, and for me to point to specific tools to say, how do we get there? That's what these two things are about. So our 8th grade math teacher had developed what were called math skill drills, and Dr. Finnerty built upon that and created the SCISRs. And they're specific skill packets that are targeted to develop test-taking strategies and the deep standards-related question style of the MCAS exam, to make sure that along with our rigorous curriculum, we are preparing kids to be able to navigate that exam and demonstrate their ability in the way that they're actually being asked to. And that happened in 8th grade, and I dare say, along with great teaching and great curriculum, these two programs really helped us. So we're talking about using this as an opportunity to build upon those best practices and duplicate that at the 7th grade and duplicate that at the 6th grade. And theoretically roll the skills drills and the SCISRs down to the other 2 grades and see if we can have the same impact down at those other 2 grades as well. Ton of work in professional development. I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but we were very busy last year. Very proud of the fact that we added a site-based professional development component throughout the district. At the middle school, we had 12 different offerings at the site-based level that were all connected to our school improvement plan, and they related to curriculum development, instructional practices, and literature reviews. Also a lot of professional development last year in technology, especially around educator evaluation using TeachPoint, also around the Aspen Family Portal, as well as getting used to Chromebooks and Google Sites for Education, and we did a lot of work in the flipped classroom as well at the middle school. So under community and communication, I just mentioned the Aspen Family Portal. We had school-wide implementation of that. Moving into year that, I will quantify this a little better for everyone, but right now, anecdotally, we have a much higher percentage of teachers using the Open Gradebook this year than we did last year. I think our comfort level, and we had talked about that respectfully, that we needed to make sure we had people trained and comfortable, both on the parent end and the educator end with that. I think that comfort level is getting better and better as we move forward. So we have more people using that on a regular basis, and the parents who are using it regularly report that that is a fantastic tool that they're happy with. We've been increasing our use of Twitter, YouTube channels, blogs, QR codes, and now we're using text updates. So if you're a middle school parent, you might have been able to sign up for those from some teachers. It's a reverse texting app with a secure phone number that you cannot call, and the teachers on the other end do not see your number, nor do you see this fake number, but it's a great way for teachers to just pop something out there and send a text out to you. And as a parent, I just experienced this for the first time. I got a text that my daughter was going to jazz band rehearsal after school today, which is fascinating, just to look down and not even have to worry about looking in my email for a message anymore. So it's just even more instantaneous than anything. You don't have to open your Twitter, it just pops right up. So, you know, some people would think we use too many tools, and what I'm trying to explain to teachers and parents is I think if we use a lot of tools, it allows people to just choose the tool or two that they're comfortable with. So if you're not a tweeter, you don't have to check it out, but you know it's embedded on our website. If you like to text and you get the text, that's great. If you're happy with the weekend update, you just want to hear from us once a week, you can do it that way as well. So I think we want to offer the community menus to choose from and then let them pick what they like to use best. Great community events such as our concerts, our art show, volleyball night, kick out cancer night. One of the things we talked about last year was trying, as well as some of the other schools, trying to connect with parents through more educational opportunities. Miss Natalie Branch from our tech team gave up some of her own free time on back to school night at the middle school, and we offered up in the library Aspen Family Portal drop-in sessions during back to school night, which she reported were pretty well attended. And so we kind of let parents off the hook, especially parents who had already been through the middle school before, and said, look, if you don't want to sit through Principal Branco's boring welcome to the middle school thing, go up and take advantage of learning about Aspen from one of the pros. And so there were a lot of people, and parents gave themselves permission to step in and out of some of the teacher sessions, and we made it clear that that was okay. And we're going to look at alternate schedules next year so that people don't feel guilty about skipping in and out of anything. And maybe that's the most captive audience we have every year. That's the one time I've got a full house. So we really need to make sure we get as much bang for our buck that night as possible. We also talked about micro surveys at our most recent school council meeting. My wife does a lot of surveys for a living, which is part of the reason I was able to finish my doctorate program, quite honestly. And one of the things I've learned from her is people will be more responsive if you ask them their opinions shortly after their experience, and if you ask them less questions than more questions. And so we had prepped a very long, cumbersome parent survey for last spring, and then we pulled it back at the last minute after having long conversations in the spring, and we just finished our conversation this past Tuesday at school council, and we're going to do little micro surveys out to middle school parents this year. So for example, we just finished back to school night. We're going to put together a quick and dirty 3, 4, 5 question survey just about your experience in back to school night, with some Likert scale questions and open-ended comment boxes. And then we'll do that again maybe for parent-teacher conferences, and then maybe again for another experience. So that those of us who have brain cramps halfway through the year or at the end, who might not even remember whether or not you attended back to school night and you can't answer that question, it'll be fresh in your mind for the experience. And then we can actually react in real time. So if we get feedback about back to school night, I'm not getting it in June where I really can't implement change right away. I'm getting it early in the school year, and we can kind of work on that during the school year and actually impact change the following school year. So we're hoping that that works out well. Climate and culture, I feel like the middle school is a fantastic place to be every day. I not literally skip to work, but I rarely have, it's not a pretty sight. I rarely have a day where people aren't coming into work happy, kids aren't coming in and feeling that it's a safe and healthy place to be. You know, we kick the year off with lots of assemblies. We're constantly looking at our practices. You know, you've heard about ALICE training and implementation from my other colleagues already. We do a lot of middle school specific stuff, our Signs of Suicide program in 7th grade, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. National Junior Honor Society is trying to get much more involved in the climate and culture of our school by putting together student spotlights, Student of the Month programs to really highlight their peers. Our All School Veterans Day program has taken off well. We added the spelling bee last year on top of the geography bee so that we can do more all school assemblies and all school stuff, but still focus it around something, focus around academics or focus around performances. The high school was gracious enough to let us, the 8th graders, come up for the Chris Herron Assembly last year, which was unbelievably impactful to those 8th graders. Talk about authentic learning opportunities. You couldn't get closer to the real deal there. We have team meetings every Friday where Ms. Dorfman and I go out to touch base with all 3 grade level teams. The only agenda item every Friday when we go is to talk about kids. So it's not to talk about, field trips of the minutia of the business side of education, but it's really who needs help, who doesn't, how are we doing, what's going on socially, emotionally, and academically. And out of those meetings comes a lot of good conversation and good action to make sure that we're taking care of kids the right way. musicals, plays, great interscholastic sports that add to our climate and culture. I hope Littleton recognizes this, that if you have friends and family in other towns, that is a unique thing. Not every town around us, and including some of the bigger towns around us, do not have interscholastic sports for the middle school kids. Those kids play rec sports only, and it does give them a nice solid outlet. And our after-school activities program, if you're a middle school parent, I just sent that packet out. It's chock full, 15 to 20 clubs. Mr. Bazillo alluded to the stipends in the contract. Yes, we all have stipends, not all, most of the schools have stipends for after-school activities. I will tell you that at the middle school, many of those clubs and activities that just went out in that packet are stipend-free. They're just teachers giving up time who have come to me and said, I don't care about the stipend, I just want to make sure this happens for kids. Many more than I think people would recognize. So I want to make sure that that's clear to people, that that doesn't just happen by accident or just to collect a paycheck through a stipend. Cyber safety is a big thing we're talking about. I know Dr. Harrington's talking about bringing specific people in to do assemblies and programs for parents around cyber safety that we hope will include the middle school parents in. So we really want to do a better job, I think, of targeting 2 or 3 major topics a year. I think CPAC has something going on very soon. Or did I miss it? Right? So maybe they're going to say it. So again, that's another parent outreach going on. So any of these parent evenings that we have, I think we have to make sure that we get our bang for our buck out of the parents to really help educate everybody in the community.
That is what we're known for.
That is what we're known for, bang for your buck. Bang for your buck,
Right.
right. See, tying it all back together, Alex. And under technology, I don't think there's anything really new on this list that people in the room aren't familiar with or in the community aren't familiar with. We're moving ahead very quickly, but thoughtfully in this area. We added our 3rd Chromebook to the middle school. That seems to be the tool of choice at the middle school. The iPad card is still alive and well in social studies and embedded in the curriculum there. But we have 1 Chromebook card per grade level. We're hoping to find a way to get the 4th one for the Unified Arts team moving forward. Our library PC lab, we continue to hold it together, but as Rich is talking about building a new lab model, we're also talking about doing a similar thing that Shaker Lane's looking at. Is talking about as our PCs start to expire, what's the next generation computer lab going to look like? And is it going to be a mobile device center or with charging stations and comfortable seating and that kind of stuff? So we're excited to make our library a true learning center and a hub of education at the middle school. That's it.
Questions? Daryl? Comments? Chuck?
I guess just comments. First of all, I love the fact that you mentioned the weekly meetings, the fact that it's focused on the kids, and opportunities to help a kid out. And just like I mentioned to Scott, if you can get your kid before they're too deep in the spiral, it's always best. And you've got a team that I think does a good job of that. The fact that you're nimble and proactive, I think is kind of your personality. You're on top of it. If something needs to be changed, you look at all the factors and you make the change that needs to be made. And just commend you for that. And a lot of energy at your back to school night as well. I'm sorry I didn't sit through your speech with it.
It's all right.
4th time.
I've been told people don't come to hear from me, so I'm okay with that.
Alex?
Yeah, starting with the Friday meetings, we started that last year?
This is our 3rd year trying that, but we've changed the format, so.
That's right. So I remember we had a discussion about that last year. How are those going? Do you think they're effective?
I think they're very effective. We're tying it into we've updated our SST process, which is our student study team. Dinah Sklar is our school psychologist, and because she's with us basically full-time at the middle school, she floats a little bit, but she's really with us quite often. She's going to pick up the chair seat for this student study team, which is something that another hat that I've been wearing for a while, and I think it's going to make us more effective and quicker. So coming out of those Friday team meetings, we'll be able to get information to Tanya, and she'll be able to kind of react quickly with the student study team and put interventions or plans in place, probably much quicker than we were when it was being done alone.
Excellent. And my other question is, we got some money around the time with Code.org for that room downstairs in the 6th grade wing. how's that going? And
So- yeah,
sort of
so-
looping that into the computer
So,
lab.
so two things are happening. One, Mr. Shoemaker is taking over the after-school engineering club with the fabulous Bradford sisters, who you guys saw a week or two ago at our last meeting, and they actually just met, and they're looking at Lego robotics programs as well as all of the 3D printers and other stuff that they're doing at the high school. And so when I whispered in Dr. Hogan's ear a couple weeks ago, I said basically we're the JV to your varsity. So we need to know what his program is doing. The Bradford sisters will be that connection. And then they will work with Mr. Shoemaker. So really, that room is there and the equipment is there, but this is the year that we're putting it all together to decide how it's gonna function.
Great, I like that link too. And we don't even need to pay them.
No, don't say that too loud. They'll come asking for it.
Well, let's hope they're not watching school committee meetings.
I'm all set, thank you.
Ryan, any notes on middle school, or?
I just like how, just going back to the top of your presentation, I just like how your math, your whole math thing is improving, that you're, what were you, 14th?
17th.
Or 17th, or was, yeah, 17th. I just like how that's improving. I know as an 8th grader, a few years ago, I did the skill drills, and they were a little bit of a pain in the neck, but you know what, it helps.
All right, thank you, Dr. Branco.
And LHS, Principal Harrington.
Good evening. Nice to be with you again, and just give you an update that's going to sound very similar to last June when we gave you a progress update on our school improvement plan and the work of the school council as well as the entire faculty. And the other thing I noticed, along with my colleagues today, is that there's a real thread running through pre-K to 12. A lot of initiatives. There's a lot of things I'll skip over. I won't mention because they've already been covered in depth by my colleagues. We closely collaborate. The superintendent visits us regularly, and we're always talking about district initiatives, but also talking about how we can build on each other's different grade levels, the success of the different grade levels. And I think that shows in the results and the performance of our students at the high school. Just to give you a quick overview, this is going to, again, an update or a reminder from last year. We're now offering a new Exploring Computer Science course with plans for AP Computer Science at the high school next year. And that is in partnership with code.org. There's extensive professional development provided through that partnership, so it's well worth our time and investment. We are also providing a new integrated science course. This is a real skills-based course for students who particularly struggle with academic skills, reading, writing. It's not just science content. It's really fundamental skills, and we get to bring students, give students better preparation for the eventual MCAS test that they'll take in sophomore year when they take biology. So it's sort of a precursor to their biology course. New integrated science. It's a mixture of biology, fundamentally physical science, but also some chemistry and physics concepts integrated into that. I want to commend our two biology teachers, Mrs. Sarah Berlinger and Miss Cheryl Harrington, for their work with bringing the flipped classroom model to the high school. They are now actively implementing that in their biology courses. And if you remember from last year, we talked a little bit about that at a school committee meeting, where students are watching the lecture portion of classes at home and then having more time to problem solve, do homework type problems like that they would, reading and maybe going through a text and answering questions. They actually do that in the classroom, often together, collaboratively with their peers, but also with their teacher, and getting lots of assistance. The teacher can react on the spot and intervene and help a student who's maybe struggling with something that would be typically a homework problem in the more traditional model. Perhaps we can make a presentation on that later in the year, the fine features of that. I know that the middle school's been doing that in certain areas as well. You've also heard that we've established a new special education program at the high school with more intensive services. Dr. Tracy Turner is the lead coordinator of that and instructor of that program. We're grateful for the support of Dr. Detweiler in bringing that to the high school and continue on our pre-K to 12 continuum of services for students who may, if we didn't have a model like this at the high school, may be seeking out district placements at considerable cost. So we're grateful to have that program, and it seems to be going quite well. We have completed our curriculum alignment with Common Core. You had a curriculum update last year from the coordinator, Kelly Ogden, about that. We've also, new this year, in response to coordinated program review requirements, you're going to hear more about this when Dr. Detweiler presents about the CPR findings. But there's one of the items that calls for corrective action is what we're going to do with our physical education program to meet the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education requirements for time on learning, or structured learning time. We are out of compliance with physical education in terms of the credits required for graduation. So I made a proposal to the superintendent, to Dr. Detweiler, and Dr. Jamian, and eventually will come forward to you, to increase the graduation requirement for credits required for graduation. Students will have to take more physical education classes. But along with that, I'm also proposing, and this will come at a later meeting, so I won't go into detail tonight, but we'll also be proposing an alternative credit option. This has the endorsement of our physical education staff as well as our school council and entire faculty, to give, and strongly supported by lots of parents and students, to have an option that would allow students to count their varsity or their sport, regardless of whether it's varsity or JV, or their after-school activity, as long as it's vigorous and structured with a coach, and a variety of other requirements will be in place, that they could get credit for that. Yeah, lots of our students participate in after-school sports and athletic teams. Some of them are not school-related, but they take hours of their time, and they're incredibly strenuous and vigorous activities. And we'd like to make an arrangement with the school committee's endorsement to give credit for that, and allow students flexibility within the school day, which is quite limited. You know, it's a fast day. It doesn't maybe not seem that way to some students, but the day goes by quite quickly between 7:30 and 2. And it's a lot to cram in there. So this gives students an option, either to take a study break, or to, some students would actually add a course rather than take an academic course rather than take a PE class. But PE would still be provided for students who would want it during the day. So I've given you a little bit of insight into the details of that, but there'll be much more extensive detail coming to you once the Superintendent Kletchy arranges to make that proposal public to the school committee. Again, I gave you an update last year a little bit about AP, but one of the things that's definitely happening in AP is extensive revisions required by the College Board. So we've responded to that. Our AP Spanish teacher, or teachers now, Margot Gillen, along with Beth Powers as the new AP Spanish teacher this year, have collaborated on making the updates to the Spanish curriculum. Dr. Hogan was here just at the last school committee meeting, bringing forward updates to the AP Physics program. You may have heard a few things from him at the last meeting about that. And then there are significant revisions required by the College Board for the AP US History curriculum. And Mr. Bill Maskinis has done that. So happy to report that we're in compliance there with the College Board. The next slide, if you just scroll up a little bit, I'll gloss over this one. In regards to NEAS requirements, we have implemented our school-wide rubrics for 21st century learning expectations. You've heard about that at previous school committees meetings over the years. I won't go into detail about that. But I did send a progress report update just a couple weeks ago to NEASC. It's been accepted by their director, and I may hear back, but they did accept our progress update that's required. And one of the things we had to do was explain that we were doing this. We were implementing rubrics as part of our assessments. Common assessments are actively implemented throughout our school curricular areas, but in the Spanish courses, the Spanish teachers collaborated to develop common assessments to gauge student learning, and we're happy to report that. You've heard from previous meetings about PARCC testing, so I'll gloss over that. And you've also heard about the DDMs. In regards to professional development, we're grateful for the Kimball Fund for helping us make this possible. We've adopted a new textbook series and instructional resources for our biology courses. And you had a chance, I think, to get a preview a little bit of the biology results. Our science MCAS results were outstanding. It's a credit to our teachers, fine performance and talent of our students as well. But we're hopeful that this, having even better resources and text materials will benefit students in the future. And this is an investment in that program. And so, again, thank you for your support of the biology program. Numerous site-based professional development opportunities have happened throughout the year. My colleagues have mentioned a few at their schools. We've had lots of things, and we actually gave you a whole list at last June's meeting of all the different site-based activities that happen, so I won't go into detail on that. And like my other colleagues, again, the common themes, Section 504 training for all the staff, ALICE training, DDM training, and educator evaluation training. And moving right along. Our school council, and in particular, I want to thank Deidre Jones, who's again returned to our school council, has revised and updated the community service program. There's some refinements we need with our paperwork and just how we communicate the requirements of community service, and that's been accomplished. So happy to bring that news to you tonight. And we also, I don't have the exact numbers for you, but I did talk to our athletic director, Mr. Lynn, and he informed me that participation in co-curricular athletics is quite high, and it continues to grow each year. And I'll leave it to him to give you the exact percentages, but we're also seeing this across the board with clubs at the high school. New clubs this year, for example, one of them is the Philosophy Club, that's new. That seemed to have, I walked by it the other day, and they seem to have a good showing of students who are participating in that. We have our annual principal roundtables and coffees with parents. That's part of our communication. We're also, we're using Twitter. That's a way to communicate activities at the school. I also want to highlight, once again, the fine performance of our band. Ryan, I know you're part of the band, and you're very grateful to have Mrs. Bridge as the band director. She's done a great job with performances in Florida and getting students even more excited. I don't have any comparison from years ago, but in the time I've been at Littleton High School, this is the highest highest number of students we've had in band by far. It's amazing how many students are participating in the band program. Great theater program coming from the middle school too. And the band collaborated, as you all know, quite well with the bands from Littleton, Colorado, Littleton, New Hampshire, and the 300th Parade, and they really showed their musical talents off. And another thing we do quite often is we invite, sometimes it has nothing to do really with the school administration. It has a lot to do with just the efforts of the department coordinators and teachers themselves. They'll bring in guest speakers. And that's happening all the time to people who are in the field. Just recently, Dr. Hogan talked about bringing a local engineer in to talk to students and get them excited about engineering. It happens when we bring in a classics professor from Holy Cross, or someone from a historian, or someone who's in the environmental world, an artist, to talk to students about what they do. And that's happening regularly at the high school. It's a tribute to the teachers. I'm purposely going quick. I hope I'm going at it not too fast for you. Climate and culture. We implemented our new safety procedures and trainings, and that continues next month. There'll be more information coming out to parents soon about training for students in that. Our staff have been trained in that. Dave Riley was recently here talking. He's our energy guru, and he was talking about the Green Ribbon School Initiative, and he mentioned that Liz Barry at the high school is going to be heading that up in partnership, building on the efforts of Tricia Bonacore and Greg Gillette at the middle school. So again, we're excited to see where that leads for us, what that leads to. And we've begun implementation of a new advisory model with assemblies occurring just about every month now, at least scheduled for it, where we gather the students in different formats over the course of the year. And we'll have more to say about that in June. And I already mentioned Twitter, where we're regularly doing that. Chromebooks have been, you've heard that word a lot tonight across all the buildings. And Mike McGeckert has really, supported the implementation of Chromebooks across all the buildings. And it's happening everywhere at the high school. Chromebooks are being used by the guidance counselors to facilitate the management of Naviance accounts, and those parents who have students at the high school know what that's about, where students manage their online college applications and admissions process. It's central to the work of really high schools right now. Chromebooks are also being have brought the World Language Lab to the classroom, where in past years high schools would have a World Language Lab where you'd have to find time to go there. Now you don't have to move. The lab is right there in the classroom. Chromebooks are also available for the history department and research, and you've had presentations about that. I also want to thank the PTA for their funding and sponsoring of a new flat screen display in the main lobby that features community messages and regular daily announcements. It's been a nice way to highlight different college representatives that are visiting each day at the high school. Just today, we had Holy Cross, a few other schools, and we have more scheduled for tomorrow. College representatives from the different admissions departments. This is just part of how we do our business. Come in every week to the high school to talk to students about their programs and make a pitch. Students, subject to student sign-up. Students have to be interested. So it's not mandatory. It's you know, you might remember, I think it was there when you were there, so it was there when Alex was there. And now we've made it even bigger. More and more colleges are interested. And we expect our college fair in the spring to be the biggest we've ever had in years. Now more and more colleges are hearing about, I don't know, I'd like to say that as a proud principal that they're excited about Littleton, but they are getting, you know, they are interested in making their pitch at our college fair now. And so some schools that we would never have attend, even though we invite them, are now coming. So that's good news. And we've already talked about implementation of the Aspen Parent Portal. That's pretty well established at the high school. So that was my blitz at the end. Since I'm last, I had to go quick. And I'm recognizing the hour, too. I know Dr. Delmas still has to go. Any questions?
Sure. So on the, it's on the AP pieces there. So right now, we sort of have, you know, if I get the general track, we have the CP offering, an honors offering, and usually an AP offering there. With the explosion, in my terminology, of the number of people interested in the AP level exams, is it for the testing for college credit, or is it for the cry for more rigor and more material? And at which point should we be looking at baselining what we're doing in the other two tracks, as opposed to always offering 3 tracks of classes there?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the baselining piece, but I do know the answer to the first part of your question. It's definitely a call for rigor. I mean, students parents are interested in AP programs because they know that college admissions officers or admissions directors look at the transcript. And one of the biggest factor in college admissions, from what I understand, is the rigor of the rigor of the courses the student took in high school. Not just SAT results and things like that, but the actual rigor of the courses. So a lot of students are looking for that, and parents are looking for that brand to help give them a little bit of an edge in the college admissions process.
Can I interject for a second? That's the appearance of rigor, in my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think Daryl's question is more of, would we be thinking that if there's the demand for actual rigor of the coursework to challenge the students,
Yeah.
your question is, would we contemplate pulling that downward a little bit?
Bumping the honors courses up a little bit more.
Pulling that rigor
'cause I
down
don't-
to the, you know, from
Yeah.
AP down to honors and honors towards CP conceivably.
I'll
Because
give you
where
an
I'm going
example
with
of
it
that.
is given the size of the district and our number of students, I don't know if we can always offer
Right.
3 tracks of every class.
That's true.
On it.
And to your point, statistics, very popular course with our students and becoming more popular. Partly due to the quality of the instructor, reputation of the instructor, but just, you know, it's a solid math course that a lot of parents encourage their students to take.
Just so I'm sorry.
Joey,
Just so I'm clear, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're looking at more of a transference of curriculum, is that correct? From AP to...
I'm not sure exactly the implementation of it there, but it seems that, you know, from the AP level stuff, you get 2 pieces. You get, Mike put it, the brand of AP
Oh, yeah.
There, but also the rigor of the material and the depth is a little
Right.
higher. And I'm seeing that there seems to be a lot of demand for that. And at which point, you know, again, do we offer 3 tracks of a class, or do we start bumping some of that material so that we don't need to offer
Okay.
3 tracks in order to hit the rigor level students are looking for? You know, if 90% of the kids that wanted to take honors take APs, does it say we ought to bump the honors class up a little bit higher? And
That's the that's what I was looking for. That's the statement I was looking for. You have to be cautious,
No, that's
because the honors preparation at times is key for success at the AP level. And success at the AP level to the point where they're getting decent scores, so it will help them out in college. We were honored 2 years in a row for being an AP Scholar school. I believe that part of that was the fact that our students have that preparation before jumping into the AP. So what I was hearing you say before that last statement was maybe we could take some of those concepts and push them into the honors program. So we have to be cautious because from honors to AP is quite a jump. And we don't want to be counterbalancing what we're doing in terms of preparing these students to be successful in AP. As a superintendent, I wouldn't be happy with 2s in AP. Our objective is to ensure that our kids are prepared so that they're going to be 3 and above. And time again, our high school has proven that that's the case. So I'm all for upping rigor. I'm not an advocate of bypassing to up rigor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, like I said, I don't know what the implementation needs to be, you know, in terms of, is it transferring, is it,
Okay.
you know, there, but it seems, you know, and I got to wheel the Wayback Machine here. You know, my high school didn't offer AP classes at the time there, but the classes that we took, you know, our calculus program was the same as the freshman level college courses. But we didn't have AP calculus. You know, it was where the demand was for the rigorous math, so they moved it into the curriculum versus having a separate track for, you know, placing out at college level courses. But lately, to me, it seems that the brand or the testing of AP has gotten a certain cachet with it that is also driving parts of the curriculum selection there. And again, it's not,
You know,
don't want to be a test factory
Right.
type of thing there. I want to make sure that you know, the students have the ability to, and offerings to learn the material that will prepare them properly.
I think this is an interesting topic that probably deserves more time than I'm willing to give it,
Yeah.
given what we're trying to do tonight. But maybe if you could dialogue with Dr. Harrington, Mr. Clenchey, and maybe it's something we could talk about, just a down the road, a presentation of the AP program, how it fits into what we're doing in our curriculum, and then we can brainstorm on some ideas of are there ways to, you know, leverage that in other ways, you know, that we could all talk about and have
Be
a
happy to
robust
do that.
discussion
Yep.
like that. But it's
It
a great
was just-
topic.
It was just
Pretty
triggered by
interesting.
the 4 new offerings
Yeah.
there.
We have a presentation actually in the works with the results that were actually outstanding. Our kids did a great job this past
Maybe we
May.
can tweak that and think
Yeah.
about, you know, talking about, you know, I think we have a rough idea of how AP is done in terms of, you take the class, you take the test, you get college credit. That's traditionally how we all think about it. But I think now this is an opportunity to think about it a little more in depth to how it impacts Littleton
You don't
and
wanna
our
overdo it
students
either.
and
Yeah.
what other opportunities we can get off of by virtue of having that around.
I just add just to finish out the thought from earlier, just in regards to statistics. One of the things we're looking at is AP statistics. And we have college prep statistics, which is, you know, our 3rd level or base level. And that's very popular with students. But rather than run an honors level next year, what we're looking to do, since most of those students are taking the AP test, but they're not getting the AP curriculum per se, it's, the teacher is doing her best to implement without the textbook and everything like that. So we're going to offer AP stats next year rather than honors statistics. That's what we'd like to do. And so we'll have 2 levels of college prep, probably 2 sections of that and 1 AP, rather than 2 sections of college prep and 1 honors. We just felt that if students want to take it at that level, well, take it with just about all of them are taking the test, they might as well take the real branded course, AP, for what it is. So that was just an example I was going to provide earlier. Any-
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Chuck?
A while ago.
Yeah, so now you're off schedule, so you gotta just.
Actually, I had a comment, and again, this is probably not the right meeting for this conversation, but relative to the community service program, spent some questions about what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, so maybe if we can put that on the agenda sometime and talk about that. I didn't see AP Fitness up there.
Though, if you ask Mike Glenn, he'll tell you he has an AP fitness class.
I know some of the students in it.
Yes, I think I know. Yes. Wasn't that
That'll be
same last name?
stationary bikes in the classroom.
Alex?
Generator's on.
Yeah, first about the Exploring Computer Science course.
Yeah.
Do you know what the benchmarks are, what the expectation is in terms of the students' know-how once the class is completed?
I think I'd have to have Kelly Ogden come and speak to that.
Okay.
She's the instructor. Yeah.
That's fine. I really, really want to applaud you for the alternative credit options for physical education. I know this is sort of when I was going through the areas where we still needed work to do on the CPR, I was going through and I was thinking, okay, and then I saw this and I thought, well, this is not what we want it to be, but it's also an opportunity for us to implement something that we've been working on for a long time. I know that the school council has been talking about this for a while.
Yeah.
I know it's something that you've been interested in and sort of trying to figure out exactly how to do it. And so this process, going through the CPR, probably allows us the opportunity to try something new, where before it might have taken us longer to get there. And I know anecdotally that there are a lot of students who, not to jump back into the AP discussion, but I know that there were a lot of students who wanted to take more AP classes than they were able because of those PE requirements, and they were still doing track, and they're still doing soccer, and they're still doing football and field hockey. And so we know as educators and as a community that these students are getting the physical education that they need, and we're not worried about that, and yet the state's requirements are sort of limiting their ability to excel in different AP classes because of the limited way we schedule them, because we have a small school. So that's something that I've heard a lot for a couple of years, and I know you've heard a lot for a couple of years as well. And this is a great example of being able to take something that, again, we don't necessarily want the CPR to be saying we're not in compliance, but that gives us the opportunity to move into compliance in a way that's more innovative than what it might have been otherwise. So I just think that's really great. Real quick about the school-wide rubrics, does that include the civics?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah,
'Cause I know
they're
we
all
had-
fully implemented, yeah. now.
Perfect. I know we had a long discussion about that last
Right,
year.
yeah.
That's all. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know we're wildly behind schedule, so I'm not gonna flush
I-
out.
I tried to-
I'm not gonna flush
No,
out.
we're doing okay. We're doing okay.
If you think this is wild, just wait.
Then I'll take my time. I was gonna say I'll speed it up a little bit, but a couple things I think are really great that I'm excited to see. It's making me relive my high school days. The flipped classroom, I think that's cool. I'd love to hear more about that. Bringing professionals into the high school, I think is great, because I know even myself, I was pretty clear what I wanted to do when I went into college, but I think a lot of high school students, they think they know what they want to do, and then they hear how miserable lawyers are, and then they decide they don't want to be a lawyer anymore. So maybe, I think that's good to have people come in and talk to them. And then to Alex's point about the credits for athletics, I think it's another conversation, but I'm interested in that. And would it be only limited to athletics, or is there talk of expanding
No, in the
to other
proposal, it's not
extracurriculars?
just for LHS teams. That was one of the things that came up in our discussions at the school council. It's also an opportunity for students, and we have to watch for quality control there with, some martial arts instructor we don't have no idea about.
Right.
But there's also, some students participate in incredible figure skating programs. That's, every year there seems to be a figure skater or a gymnast that we don't, at some, local area. Or club or facility working at that, and that's hours and hours of work. They deserve some type of recognition for that. So
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of
yeah, so
non-traditional
that would be
type-
included.
type learning.
We just have to build in some paperwork to be completed by the instructor and some assessments.
Cool. And then, another time for another conversation, but to Daryl's point about the AP things, I remember when I was a senior in high school, we only had the option to take either honors, calculus, or AP calculus, and at the time there was no college prep calculus.
That's
So-
still true,
That is still true.
yeah.
I made the
We-
mistake of choosing the wrong
We don't
one.
have CP calculus. We go right from pre-calc to either calculus or statistics, and we've really expanded the statistics program since you were there.
Okay.
And, or AP calculus is still there. Yeah.
Of course. Thanks.
AP Fitness.
I was just going to say, the only one I would have been successful at was AP Fitness.
I just like the idea, I heard about this last year, about the
Alternate credit?
alternate thing for the PE, so you can take a sport and have that be a credit. I'm really in favor of that, because I do play a sport, and, I'd like to get, credit for playing a sport and not, have to take a fitness class, because it allows my schedule to be open so I can take another course if I want to, my schedule can move around. If I have a schedule issue, I can move it around instead of, you know, I have to have this PE course when I can, when my sport can count.
Right, exactly.
So I'm really in favor of that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody. Actually, Mr. Clench, do you have any closing
Yeah,
comments?
just a very quick closure comment. Although we are venturing into new ways of doing business in physical education, we do not have the latitude to be extending it beyond. I mean, we may consider a couple of things, but you have to remember that certification is required in order to receive public funding in the public school system. So we could not just bring somebody in from a company to teach high school physics. They have to be certified. So what we're looking at, though, to the flip side of that, is embracing partnerships with colleges. And one of my dreams is to have somebody from the college come in and teach a nanotechnology course. And so I think that way we can do that, because they're already affiliated with a college, and they will meet that standard of qualification that we need. So we just have to be cautious. This is a real new concept. I'm in favor of the concept for physical education. I think it's time we went down that road. But those of you that were around or have been around for a while realize that there were some legal implications that we needed to work through. And we have a stamp from the Department of Education, which that was what I was waiting for, because they own it now along with us. So I'm excited about moving forward within that particular subject discipline. Tonight you've seen some details of some of the initiatives that our schools are doing. It's all tying into Vision 2020. We kind of made it seem easy, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work on the part of the staff and the administrators to make sure that we're steering the ship in the same direction within a constant continuum. So we've done a pretty good job of doing that, and I'm looking forward as we continue with that unified direction. It will pay off as we move forward in terms of student achievement, and not only student achievement, but development of the whole child. And that's what we're all about as a school district as well. Achievement is important, but so is the development of the whole child. So again, I'd like to commend the administrators and the staff and the students for embarking upon these initiatives.
I'd like to echo that. I mean, it was a great presentation. It's clear the scope and the breadth of what's going on in every building is dynamic. It's broad. It's definitely having an impact. I appreciate the fact that all of you spoke about measuring the impact, that you're not just throwing things on the wall and seeing what sticks. You're literally taking and doing an analysis to see, what is working best and what can be done better. But mostly what I appreciate is nobody's saying when there's an opportunity, whether it's technology or new curriculum, or I haven't ever heard anybody say, you know what, we just can't do that. We simply can't do it. It's more along the lines of, we're going to do the best we can. Maybe we won't do this as well as we would like to, given more resources, mostly time, but some of it's staffing and money and things like that. It's, no, we're going to do this as best we can, and you've shown the ability to be creative and make it work, and there's no question in my mind that there's a positive impact. The only question is how positive, and we'll find that out. And you guys are doing a good job of preparing to inform us of that down the road. But I appreciate the willingness to say, we can do this. Let's see what's the best way to do it, but we're going to get it done. And I understand how stressful it can be, not just for you, but for your staff. We're asking for a lot, we being the ESC and the federal government and the parents and us specifically. And I appreciate the fact that I don't feel any, I'm sure there are moments when you shut the door and you grind your teeth. But in general, when we have these types of presentations, there's an enthusiasm, and you credit your staff, and you talk about how they're engaged and how much they enjoy doing it. And I know that it means a lot to our district, so I appreciate the amount of effort required to be this dynamic. And it's evident that we are being dynamic as a district, so that's important. So thank you for that. All right, after that one, we now have the comprehensive program review, review of findings, as well as discussion and implications of corrective action plan.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for leaving me 2 minutes for my presentation. My great colleagues, thank you. But I'm glad to be able to present this. This is the culmination of a lot of work. And again, I think it's in the spirit that this is a district that is a healthy district. It is important to examine your practice and to really strive to improve it. And that is really the essence of a coordinated program review. This is something that is done every 6 years in every school district in Massachusetts by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education by a division called Program Quality Assurance. And what the purpose of it is to ensure compliance in several areas of practice, not in all. It doesn't measure quality, it really just measures compliance. This work began 2 years ago when Diana Peterson submitted all of the documentation in the areas of special education and civil rights. Last year, I submitted all of the documentation in the area of English language education with the help of Sue Pettengill, who is our only English language learner teacher. There was a week-long visit from the department to Littleton in March. Then we received a draft report in June, which we reviewed for factual errors. We received our final report in the areas of special education and civil rights in August 22nd. And we had 20 business days to craft the corrective action plan. So the administrative team has been busy reviewing that and having input into the corrective action plan. The final report of the coordinated program review is a public document. It is available on the department's website. I always send a letter out to parents of special education students at the beginning of the year, and in that letter I spoke about the coordinated program review. I also have met with CPAC, and we've talked about this also. We have not received the final report for the English language education. We've received the draft report. Once we receive the final report, we will again create a corrective action plan. So I have preliminary results for that aspect of it. Our plan has been approved in all areas. There's just one area that I wanted us to add something additional to it. So you have the complete report in your packet, and I'm going to do a summary tonight. Okay. So this is the summary of the compliance criteria that are requiring corrective action. And I wanted to compare where we were in 2007 to where we are now, because I know that there was concern as to how improved we might have been. So looking across those areas in special education, we were in compliance in all areas except for 4, and out of 60 possible criteria. And you have to understand within each criteria, there could be 7 or 10 statements that are also evaluated. So it's not just, okay, 60, it could be a lot more than that. And you have to be in compliance in all of those areas to gain that status. In the area of civil rights, we needed action in 9 areas out of 27, and in English language education, just 1 area out of the 18. But you can see, compared to 2007, where we were out of compliance in 29 areas in special ed, now we're just out of compliance in 4. And you'll get a sense of the severity of some of these. Some of these are really quite minor, some are significant, but some are very easy fixes also. But you can see we've improved in all the areas. Okay, I want to also explain that we received the rating of partially implemented. So what this meant also is that the requirement in one or more important aspect is not entirely met, but it means that it is partially met. So we are doing something in compliance in some areas, but not in all areas of the district, if that makes sense. So I divided this into the areas that I think it logically falls into. The first area is facilities. And we were cited, actually it's only one area we were cited in, but it's counted twice because it's once under special ed and once under civil rights. So what we were cited for is that 4 rooms at Russell Street School are used for small group instruction, and they are overcrowded with surplus chairs, desks, bookcases, carts, and file cabinets, many of which are broken. 3 of the 4 rooms are labeled as storage on the front entrance. And I wanted to show you what this looks like because it might sound worse than it actually is. Okay, I hope people can see this. This is one of the storage rooms, And the front of this room, let's see if I can get that, this is actually in compliance. The room has been partitioned off from an area that you'll see in a moment, which is, probably looks more like the storage area, but we can partition these rooms. We just have to be sure that there is enough egresses for the students, and it has to look as if it's a organized space. So this is, but unfortunately this room was also labeled storage, so we recited that it was labeled storage. This is the back of the room, and you can see that it is cluttered. That's legitimate, but that was what we were cited for. This is another one of the rooms at Russell Street, and again, you can see, it's a little hard to see, but there are certainly many entrances and exits into this room. There's a window in this room. All these areas are well lit, but there is obviously storage in the front of this. And this is not a room that was just used for special education students. This was used for all students, and it was meant to be a place where they could take a small group. And that makes sense. These are connected to classrooms. The doors open up into a classroom. So this is something that immediately after the site visit, the staff stopped using those, so we were in compliance really the day after. But we do need to look at that. So the staff is, here's our corrective action plan. Immediately following the on-site visit in March, the staff at Russell Street School discontinued the use of these spaces for small group instruction. The district is weighing options, including storing educational supplies in other areas and dividing the space with partitions. If the district determines that these spaces will be used for students, the rooms will be relabeled. Are there any questions about that?
Just a comment. When many of our schools were designed, even though they're fairly new in terms of upgrading, they still are designed for traditional classroom. And in our district, we've moved way beyond that, and we offer progressive instructional strategies that are more process-oriented. Well, in order to do that, you break students up into groups. These rooms are bypass rooms from room to room, which are ideal for kids to go and sit down and work there in the view of the teacher, etc. So at the same time we were excited, we realized that as we progress in education, groupings are becoming more important, and we somehow need to fit tradition with modern progression. Storage is an issue. It's an issue in this district. We don't have a building to store things, and that's something we're going to have to address as we go, as we move beyond and continue to do this. I can't envision locking the doors on those rooms because they provide a valuable service to all students at various times of the day. And please remember that kids aren't in there all day. It's not an assigned classroom. It's a break-off group for 10, 15, whatever minutes, and then they come together and they congregate as a larger group again. So Steve and I are having conversations in terms of, what do we do to find some storage space? We don't have any. Our schools weren't designed with storage spaces, and that's not atypical, unfortunately. So do we build or purchase some garages, or what do we do to store some of this stuff? Because it's not as if it's not going to be used at a later date. We've been pretty good at culling through things, but again, there are certain things that need to be stored that aren't used year-round. So I just wanted to add those comments as we continue on with the plan.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing super quick? I just want to add as well, the spirit of the law, I think, is to ensure equity of space for all students and to ensure students aren't working in spaces that are non-conducive to learning. And many of the folks in the room have children that are either at Russell Street now or have been at Russell Street and have been in the building to see that students work everywhere. There's students working in the hallway, there's students working in the caf, there's students, because it's such a collaborative space that we'll grab students and pull them into all kinds of spaces, and never in a million years would we put students in a space that was non-conducive to learning. So by the letter of the law, these spaces are not appropriate, and we'll relabel them and we'll make sure that we're in compliance, but never would we ever have students work in a space that I wouldn't put any of my own 3 children in and feel completely comfortable with. So I want to make sure that these spaces have been used for an extremely long number of years, because we are so dedicated to small group instruction and kids being able to work together and break up into multiple places. And our staff is so dedicated to making sure that students can have a quiet place to take a test or collaborate or do any number of things. So we certainly will rectify these things. But I just want to make sure that nobody in this room or in the community would feel like students were ever working in a place that any of us would feel like we weren't comfortable with.
And all of their spaces in all of their schools were deemed very appropriate. And these were long tours. There was at least an hour tour in every single building. So they really got in and out and up and down. And I think in many ways they were very commendable about the handicapped accessibility that we do have in our buildings. Let's see. The next area is in the area of written materials. And this is challenging. There were 3 areas, but you can see that this really just has to do with cleaning up our documents. And this is challenging because if a new person comes on, there was a change from Diana to me, you have to be sure the name change is done everywhere. So this is in all handbooks. All forms that might have been on the old letterhead have to be updated. And this is actually pretty hard to do, but we recited on these. In CR 10A, it talks about student handbooks and codes of conduct. We are only required to have a handbook at the high school level, but if you have handbooks at the other levels, they all have to be in compliance. So all handbooks were looked at. So we recited because we do not address appropriate procedures for discipline procedures for students with 504 accommodation plans, and we did not include gender identity as a protected category. You're going to see gender identity come up several times, and that's because it was something that was added recently as a protected category. And it really is a matter. It's not that we don't have it as a policy. We do have it as a policy. It's just that we had to clean up our written material. The second one, CR 11A, the designation of the district equity coordinator. Well, I became that after Diana left. But again, the name didn't get changed on every single document that we have. And the CR 12A, annual and continuous notification. This is a notice that has to go out to faculty, and it also gets printed in the newspaper 3 times across the year. And again, gender identity was not added at some point. It might not be in the notice that went out. It could be at some point. It could be left in a letterhead because we had to add it to all of our letterheads also.
Just one point also. When we were going through a transition and we approved our handbooks, we hadn't even interviewed and hired a new PPS director. So it wouldn't have been in print anyway. And then as a superintendent, we knew we were going to hire somebody during the summer, and we were still going to have our past PPS director active and in charge until the middle of October. So as a superintendent, I was not going to share responsibility for that job. The PPS director that was in place with the district until retirement was the PPS director. Rita at that time was transitioning and reporting to her. So again, I understand why they want us to have this corrected, but we had started the year with that arrangement, and to pull everything back in and reprint it is costly. And we did send letters out stating that we have a new PPS director, and obviously these were her responsibilities. So again, a little glitch, but the way I looked at it, it was a necessary glitch at that particular point in time with the approval process and the hiring process. So.
And we were definitely intent on improving it in some areas. We reprinted all of the bullying brochures that we have in each school. So I think in all of the more public areas, we had corrected that and had also added gender identity. This is our correction plan in this area, that all student handbooks will be thoroughly reviewed to ensure that all language is updated, including the new provisions under Chapter 222, discipline procedures. Now, that wasn't even looked at by the CPR because that wasn't in effect, but we have to keep on updating because, so you can see, that just came in July, and we really have to then redo that in all of our handbooks. So we have to find a procedure where we continually have that on our agenda to look at. Also, CR 11A, we have to review all those to be sure that names are updated, and CR 12A likewise. All electronic and print documents will be reviewed to ensure that gender identity is added to all written material. In the area of documentation, this is really more of our record keeping. So we have CR 20. We recited that in an IEP, there is a statement called a non-participation,
something like that.
Participation justification statement. And it doesn't always state clearly why removal from the general education classroom is critical to a student's program. Now, this goes to the spirit that we are supposed to provide programming for students in the least restrictive environment. And the least restrictive environment is the general ed classroom. But we do have to take students out to provide programming in other areas. And when we do that, we have to have this statement in each IEP as to what we are doing and why we're doing that. And so some IEPs would have that statement well written, but others would not have that well written. Does that make sense? SC 37, procedures for out-of-district placement. We were cited that the district is not documenting the site visits for students and out-of-district placements. We are required to visit any student in and out of, well, the site, not the student, but the site 2 times a year. One is for the annual review of the IEP, and the other is usually a visit that we might be scheduled or unscheduled. And it's to verify that that out-of-district placement meets the quality that we hold it to. It doesn't mean that we weren't visiting those. I think in some cases we weren't, but we also weren't documenting it. And I think to some extent this was a casualty of the out-of-district role that had been sort of piecemeal together for several years. Last year we hired Kathy Russo, who's our new out-of-district coordinator, for 4 days a week. This year we've increased it to 5. It is quite demanding. We have probably 40 students that are placed out, so she has to visit all of these places and deal with a lot of different schools. So you'll see the correction plan in a minute. And then we had CR 16. This is notice to students leaving without a diploma. The district is not sending written notice to former students, informing them of publicly funded post-high school academic programs and encouraging them to participate. So the corrective action plan for this is that for the non-participation justification statement, there will be staff trainings during professional development time on this topic. For not documenting the site visits, Kathy Russo will develop a form and a log to document this action. And for the notice to students, we already have a form, and the guidance department at Littleton High School will develop a tracking system to ensure all students leaving school without a diploma receive this notice. Okay. Staff training is another area. And this is an important area. I think these become more important. You can see a lot of these were more kind of the paperwork of our work, but this is staff training. We were cited under CR 10B because cafeteria workers, custodians, athletic directors, and advisors for extracurricular activities have not participated in the professional development that all of their staff have received. So all staff receive this training every year. These individuals have not. Also, in regard to staff training regarding civil rights, again, gender identity had not been added into the staff training that we do.
Just a clarification, the athletic director would have, because he's a teacher on staff.
Right.
Advisors, as long as they're staff members, teachers, or ed assistants would have received the training. So we're really looking at cafeteria workers and custodians, unless we have somebody from the community coming in.
Well, actually, when they were here, this was something that we self-reported to them that we had not included these people, because that's part of the documentation that Diana had.
So some of it is just documentation,
Right.
you just say the athletic dude.
Right.
Basically, it's redundant because he's also included under the teacher category.
Exactly.
So some of it is paperwork, and some of it is legitimately, there are a couple of classes that, employee that you're just going to have to do some training on.
Right. As far as the corrective action, there will be a review and update of our bullying policy, which I think is good to really look at that again, and our procedures. And after that review, then the identified staff who didn't participate will participate. Staff training materials will be updated to include gender identity as a protected category. Now, these are areas that I think do affect students. All the other areas, I think, are ones that are important, but they're not directly affecting a student. These are areas that do. CR 34, continuum of alternative services and placements. The district has not provided substantially separate programming for students K through 12 who require specially designed instruction and significant modifications to the curriculum. Now, this was something coming in as your new PPS director. I was aware of this. I could see that as what you have. because obviously we speak about the need to provide for all students. And when we write IEPs, as I said before, we try to do it all in the general ed classroom. But if you take a student out of the general ed classroom between 20 and 60% of the time for their programming, that is considered partially separate. If they're out more than 60%, or it would be between 60 and 100%, that's considered separate, substantially separate. We do not have any programs that are substantially separate. When we have students that have that severity of need, we tend to refer them to the CASE collaborative classrooms. So some of our students are in the CASE programs, which are in our schools. But we do need to develop partially separate programs. And we did not have that throughout. And again, that was obvious to me. That was one of the reasons why we commissioned the Walker Partnership evaluation of our K-12 continuum. So that's a significant one, and that will require, I think, a lot of creative opportunity to develop this. We also were cited for CR 7B, structured learning time. That's the phys ed issue.
Go back to the other one, Rita. There's an important component that we need to bring up here, and you touched on it a bit. When we're considering pulling students out of a mainstream curriculum, we don't do so without a lot of process and thought, because the minute you pull a student out of a mainstream curriculum, it's much harder to integrate them back into mainstream. So we view this as we do everything humanly possible to keep our students on a mainstream curriculum, because if they're pulled off of it in grade 3, it's very, very difficult for them to be able to integrate back in and be successful. So I think we take these things very seriously, and the report is right on in terms of we need to document those auxiliary services that link to the curriculum in the classroom, because they're not out 100% of the time. And I think that's where we need to do a better job. But as a district, we're passionate about making sure that our students are curriculum aligned, unless there's no other alternative left. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Certainly, and students are always integrated for the social aspects, but there are some students whose curriculum is really more along the lines of vocational skills or activities of daily living. And so I think it's hard to appreciate the variety of students we have in the district, because we don't often speak about the students that I deal with, but there really are some wonderful students that they're a real asset to the community, but they are not going to be mastering the typical academic curriculum. But we still owe it to them to give them the right education. So that's really what this is saying. We're held on both ends. We're held to try to keep students in the classroom with that non-participation justification statement, but we also have to provide for them when we can't. Does that make sense? So it's a broad expectation we have on our shoulders.
And we are expanding programming in our schools, because we're finding we have enough of a critical mass to keep students in district in a lot of cases rather than out of district, which is creating a new paradigm for us, especially at the high school. The high school will see some new demographics in the next few years as a result of developing programs for these students, because we do have a critical mass. There, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it wasn't uncommon that most students that we were providing programs for that were Tier 4, if we want to use the vocabulary, were exiting to an out-of-district placement prior to grade 9. And again, we're at that spot that we don't have to do that anymore, because we have the critical mass and the opportunity to provide that programming. So.
Right, and it's definitely not just a financial benefit. I do believe it's a benefit to the community to keep these students. And so CR 18, responsibilities of the school principal. This is the current district curriculum accommodation plan, needs to be reviewed and revised. We have one, but it just needs to be improved. So the corrective action plan here, I broke these down because I wanted to go into more depth on each of these. As far as the plan for partially separate programming, as of September 2014, the district has hired a full complement of staff, K through 12. We have devoted resources to the selection and purchase of targeted curriculum materials, and we have scheduled time for professional development for the staff. I meet periodically with the staff. We're going to some trainings with other districts that have developed some programs that we're trying to develop, and it is, I say, it will definitely benefit our students, but it is a new area that we're moving into. Throughout the year, we're going to continue to meet and work on this. And I do think there's that lingering question that I have with the department as I continue with my conversations. To what extent does the district have to provide substantially separate programming if we have case programs available to our students and they are housed in our buildings? This is the one about the, let's skip one. No. The, oh, this is the phys ed one. That actually Dr. Harrington has proposed a plan that DESE has already approved. He's going to present that to the school committee because we need your approval. And we also have to submit a plan by December 1st with a timeline for implementation this year. This was the one piece of our corrective action plan that DESE did not approve, that we were hoping to be able to implement this at the beginning of next year, but they said, no, you have to start it this year with some students. And then the district curriculum accommodation plan, it's called a DCAP. The purpose of a DCAP is to articulate the availability of resources that support regular classroom teachers in their efforts to analyze and accommodate the diverse learning needs of students in the general education setting. So this is general ed teachers working with all students in their setting. What are the things that they should be doing to help all of them? And our plan for that is that over the course of the year, we're going to develop a framework for the DCAP, incorporating aspects of our current DCAP, aspects of the Vision 2020, and a review of other DCAPs from other districts that we like. We're going to involve all educational staff in the development of strategies throughout the year, during time allocated to professional development. Some of those afternoons that we have with staff will be used for this. And that ultimately we'll incorporate the, we're going to pilot it, and then ultimately incorporate the DCAP as a resource for all staff. It will be also posted on our website. And that's it.
And just a point of clarification, Rita alluded to this, we did have a DCAP plan in our district. It was more of a blueprint rather than a green print. And what was happening is, with RTI evolving within our district, we were documenting processes as part of RTI, but we weren't looking at our DCAP plan, and our DCAP plan should have included those processes. So what we're doing is we're going to start from scratch. We're going to look at this skeleton that we've used in the district for many years, and take a look at perhaps different ways of creating categories to capture the accommodations, pre-accommodations to special education identification would be the best way of putting it.
And this will also lead us to develop a consistent referral process, a pre-referral process K through 12, which we have, I think, Dr. Branco was talking about that at the middle school, but we do need to look at that and have that consistent across all of our schools. But are there any questions?
Can I ask a question?
We'll open it up for public input after we go. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. I mean, it seems like there were, when I was going through this before, I did have some more questions about why the mistakes had happened, but it seems like they were all pretty much good faith compliance, that there was some reasoning outside of our hands. Doesn't seem like there was any glaring mistakes that were made or anything. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I think it's a huge improvement over the report from 6 years ago, and I know you came into the district just a couple months out from the when they would come in and evaluate this very, very vast programming and quality assurance program that they have. So I think, as Mike said, for the most part, there are minor glitches in paperwork, that kind of thing. It sounds like all of that there's sort of two categories of stuff that affects students and the stuff that's just sort of like administrative.
Right.
And I feel satisfied that the issues that are affecting students now are being addressed through this action plan in as quickly as possible, in a way that's not disruptive and creating a supportive learning environment. My only question is with CR 10A regarding the gender identity. I know that's new relatively. I think that law the regulations came into effect, I want to say July 2013, the beginning of that year. And I understand that that's one of those administrative issues where it just wasn't included on all of the documentation because there's so much documentation that includes that non-discrimination language. Do you know offhand if the CPR checked whether we're compliant, not just in terms of including that language, but in terms of DESC's recommendations that they issued regarding how to work with students who are gender nonconforming?
Right. Actually, it would be more along just the lines of paperwork.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But did CPR check up on us in terms of what those recommendations were from DESE, or was that not part of their review?
I don't think that was part of the review.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
One question I had is, are we required to have printed handbooks? And if we have it electronically, and do we have to have it printed, I guess is my question.
I think you have to have documentation that parents have received it in some way, so even if it's provided electronically, I think you need to have something where they sign off and say they have received it.
It's been made available to them?
Right.
Okay.
But you want something that says that they have actually received the document. So sometimes a hard copy will do that with it, the back page. So if it's just electronic, you would still need a piece of paper that gets sent and signed.
Okay. Just laying out my next statement, really, more than a question. Well, regardless of whether it needs to be printed or not printed, if it didn't need to be printed, we could do some sort of print on demand. If somebody
Right,
wanted
right.
a printed copy, they could come to the central office and do. But I think it's important to have some sort of a process or procedure in place so that moving forward, there is some sort of an easier way for you to be able to, not that we see you going anywhere. But there should be some sort of process, procedure, so that
To update. Yeah.
it'll be easier to update.
Definitely,
Now,
definitely.
you've gone through it now, and you know all the different, where all the skeletons are hidden, and where you have to make the changes, so I'm sure
Yeah.
that would make it easier for the next change down the road.
And actually, a lot of this material was submitted by Diana, when Diana was still in that director role. So for the department to come in and say, well, as Superintendent Clenchey said, well, it was submitted this way, but now when we're looking at it, we see something different. So, some of it was the transition, and I wasn't expected to submit new paperwork to them,
Right.
but we were expected to have it changed in everything we had.
That was the only comment I had. Well, actually, no, I did have another comment. We're already here, right?
Let's go.
You mentioned there's 40 students, so there's 40 visits that have to be done.
80.
80 visits twice a year. But are some of them co-located, like are some of the students in the same locations? or-
Some are, but actually, we also have the Littleton Group Home, and that generates a surprising amount of work for us, because there's a lot of turnover there, and when those students come in, they have to be placed. And as I say, there's a surprising amount of
So,
turnover
I
there.
mean, if you're looking at 80 visits over the course of 180 days, that's quite a workload.
Oh, yeah, there's more than 80 visits she has to do then, as I say,
Right.
because 40 is probably the solid core, and then we have the ins and the outs.
Nice job. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
presenting it to us.
Yeah, no, I wanted to just, compliment everybody on the work they did to get us to the place that we're at with this. The ripple effect of us being up to date on our policies is the ripple then through the administration to update everything there. So I'll just slack off on the policies. Is that what But I think what it caught me on here, and I think we as a committee might need it, sorry to switch it to cost here, but there's some cost implications of some of the activities that we're being directed to do. And I think those would be useful for us to highlight to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee there, because I know we're trying to maintain staff neutrality here, but in order to meet some of these requirements, just using the out-of-district coordinator role there, we have to up staffing in order to meet the required pieces there. For for a level staffing budget projections, we can't trade off decreasing staffing in other areas because we need to up the other academic areas for it. So I want to make sure we are laying the groundwork of, we've been directed to do both facility change, pieces that will affect our costs. There's staff pieces here, and there's program development pieces that have to be accommodated within this, and there's a cost associated with it. there that I think we ought to take the opportunity to make sure they understand something, that's going to be affecting, may potentially affect our budget. I don't know.
To expand upon that a little bit too, it's a question of meeting the requirement, but doing it in a way that we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul to do so. That's important. to
Well,
make
that's
sure
why I
we
use that
consider,
example,
too.
because, we know that we're getting pressed at some of the grade levels or in the high school and course enrollments there, that we're going to be seeing requests about staffing there. So there is no room to trade staffing off here.
Yeah, we've done what we can.
Yeah.
I mean, we restructured some of our special education programming this year, and we're able to bring a high school psychologist on at a zero net cost to the district. And we did a few other things in terms of Tier 4 programming at a zero cost to the
Definitely.
district. But we shuffled things around, and we're lean, but the shuffling, we're done with what we can do. So you bring up a very, very important point, Daryl, as we're moving forward. And again, that accompanied with the fact that we've increased our class sizes within an acceptable range, but we're at the upper end of the acceptable range. So as a superintendent, I'm watching them very, very closely. And so we're certainly not at a point where we could say with confidence that we can continue forward with level staffing for 2 or 3 years. We're not there. And we've had a number of conversations in that area.
Thank you. I remember the last one. I've been here long enough to remember that. I also think Diana Peterson bookended her tenure because she was instrumental in that one and this one. And it is a tremendous amount of work that, it's not like you get to put the day-to-day stuff aside and just do this for a while. It's not how it works. So I really want to commend Diana Peterson on the work that she did on both of those. You can see that there's a distinct difference from the last time to this time. But similarly, when we did it 6 years ago, a lot of the sightings were very administrative and they were cleaned up, and it didn't necessarily, before or after the fact, have a significant, if any, impact on student learning or on the students at all. But the ones that did, were the ones we paid more attention to. But I would like to just go back to one phrase you used, Rita. You said, find a procedure. So you talked about the corrective actions specific to the sightings, but you're also talking about what can we do so that it doesn't happen again next time. It's not enough to just fix today's instance of this issue.
Right.
It's more of how can we put a procedure in place that makes us proactive so that the next time those numbers will go down even further. And then to Chuck's point, that when we do have to address an issue, it's easier to do, not as arduous. So I appreciate that. If we could make sure that we don't lose sight of the forest for the trees as you're going through these corrective actions, when we as a district take an opportunity to say, well, how can we do it better so that we don't have to deal with this again in quite the same way? I think that's as important as, in terms of how we go about doing our business and just fixing, putting a Band-Aid on a particular issue and letting it get
Ways to
straightened out.
institutionalize the review on our own, exactly.
So I appreciate that.
Certainly, and I'd like to say that all of these have timelines that are associated with them. You have them in that corrective action plan you received. And our requirement is that by next August, we are in full compliance in all of these areas. So, again, that's doable, and it's been an opportunity. I will say that I think it's an opportunity, and I look forward to it.
All right, happy to open up to the public, but in order to do that, Rita, if you could just sit somewhere where there's a microphone, because the front rows here, we have microphones and we're getting picked up as we discuss, but in the back rows, rather than having you call your question out, if you could just step up to the podium so that the people on TV can hear us. I know it's a little disconcerting at times, but name and address, and then the question or comment you have.
You can just place it,
It's on the other end of Scott there, be perfect. Right there, that first row.
There's a microphone right above that seat there.
Oh, right there, okay, I see.
Like Bob Uecker, in the front row.
Okay.
I didn't know it was so
Go ahead. That's okay.
It's just for the TV, it's just because it makes it easier for people that are on television, so sorry, go ahead. Sorry, name and address.
Kelly Doyle, 11 Meadow Drive.
Thank you.
CR 11A, it said that the staff member designated to serve as coordinator for compliance with the district's responsibility was no longer employed with the school district. Was that referring to Diana Peterson? Or
Yes, that's right.
So that's your job now?
Yes, that is my job now,
Okay,
yes.
so 6 years seems like a big amount of time before they do this review again. So if there's changes in the special ed environment, that would be something that would go through you.
Well,
Like, the
right.
school would go through you first, being, is that how that would work?
You mean as a parent, if you had a concern about any of
Yes,
these areas?
exactly.
Certainly, yes.
Yes, I'm
Oh,
trying to
you'd
find out
come to me, right,
who's
right.
my
Right.
go-to person.
Right.
Well, let's be cautious there. It depends on what it is. We have a plan. You can go on our website, and it's a matrix that you can actually follow to help out. So it depends on what you're looking for. So it may be a question that would go to the SPED liaison. It may be a question that would go to the principal. So it really depends on what kind of question that you have. You always start at the spot that, or the point that's closest to where the concern or question is. And then you continue on if that information can't be given. So it's not just that you don't directly go to
At the high
Rita.
school level, the parents don't always know, what's going on a day-to-day basis. So if there's a person who is coordinating, where are my kids, where's their classroom? Does it have 2 egresses? Does it have, is
Right.
it a proper, would I know that from my high school son? Would he come home and tell me? No. But is there someone who is, overseeing all these changes?
Yes.
So
Yes,
that
in
a
each
parent
school.
can trust that that is happening, because otherwise.
In each school, we have liaisons, SPED teachers that have assigned students in case loads. But if you can't find an answer, you're certainly welcome to contact Rita or email Rita.
Right, that's what I was wondering, if she was that person.
I am ultimately responsible for everything, and all of these issues around compliance will
Okay.
typically come right up to me.
Okay.
But again, if you ask the liaison, as we say, the liaison is the hub, it's sort of like the case manager for any
Right,
student.
right.
But most compliance issues, they're going to involve me right away, and we'll work with the principal. It's also, I didn't mention because just of the time, there's also mid-year review. So in any area that we were not in compliance, in 3 years, they come back and they revisit just these areas that we were not in compliance with, to be sure that we're still doing, that we're still in compliance.
Thank you. Anybody else? Specific on the CPR?
Lisa Boone. Do I need to address one of them? Sorry, you know who I am.
We'll fill in the blank.
First, I actually want to say thank you for recognizing Diana. I mean, I do think that that is important because she did have the first one, which, was really difficult to get through, and then did spend a lot of time trying to fix a lot of the things that were a lot of paperwork issues, a lot of training issues. So, and we've seen a great improvement. And thank you, Rita, for presenting, because even though we've reduced things, some of them are important, and I'm happy to hear. And she's been working closely with CPAC and getting feedback from us as well. It's just nice to hear that the things that are considered important are really being looked at, and the procedures, which is just so important, because that will help to really change the process of what we go through in order to put these corrections in place so that they don't continue to happen again or happen again in the future. So, I just wanted to go through some of the things that I feel are important. Certainly the anti-bullying training and the review of the anti-bullying program should continue to happen. It shouldn't be, it's done, so it's done. And certainly, I hope bus drivers are included in that list, because I think they're, a big part of time of a student's day, and that is an area where there can be a lot of things happening, and how to manage potentially that, and send information on back into the school. That's something that I thought of and hope that they are included. And if not, maybe we can include them, just knowing that it is an area that students are certainly more exposed to the potential there. The other one was the curriculum review for the students who are pulled out of classroom in a separate area. I think that's a huge piece. I think I happen to have a student who needed a lot of extra help and has really transformed in his ability. And one of the things that has happened, so part of the DCAP process, it would be really nice to see, to be able to take that opportunity. And there's so many great things happening now in education, and our schools are certainly using many of these initiatives, like better access to the curriculum through different ways, whether it's, it's not just textbook anymore. There's a lot of online opportunity. There's a lot of hands-on. There's a lot of integrated learning, and that can make an enormous difference for students who may have a different learning style. And seeing that and knowing that that can affect and help many students, even those that are not of special need or have some obvious learning style that is maybe slightly different. So I think those things are really up and coming, and the DCAP process would be a huge opportunity to make sure that we continue to take some of the initiatives that are happening, like flipped classroom and like some of these other means of accessing the curriculum, to be integrated and utilized even more broadly across our entire district, because I think it's sort of, it's emerging. It's not where it can be, and it would be great to see us be able to utilize these opportunities to facilitate that. And electronic updates. I have a real issue with the electronic updates, or the lack thereof, especially for our district website. I really use it all the time, and it's been piecemeal as far as updates, even with the list of the current staff, with the possibility, I know a lot of teachers have web pages, but it's hard to know if you're a parent to get access to those unless the teacher sends out an email and you happen to remember and you have the access. It's a great place to have this information in one spot that parents can rely on. And it's difficult because it varies so much from school to school right now. And I know that this is, again, something that's emerging. I know we're working on it, but I think sooner rather than later, if we can, if we're going to say we need to update our not just paper, but online or electronic information, maybe we say it has to be done by a certain date. And then everybody knows we can rely on that, by this date within the school year, we're going to have our new staff in there, and how to get in touch with them, and, just basic emails. It's just so important. And I think the more we are utilizing electronic information, the more critical it is to have that up to date and accurate. Because it's just, if a parent goes, it becomes such a problem when it's not. So that's what I have.
All right, moving on. Old business, school committee goals. Daryl, you were helping us out with that.
Just prior to the meeting, I sent a draft to all the committee members of some inputs that I was thinking about for the goals for discussion. And in speaking with the chair earlier, I guess maybe it'd be best if everybody took a chance to read through those. Maybe if they wanted to take a crack at modifying any of providing some inputs there, they could forward it back to me, and I can package it up for the next meeting and try to just sort of the coordinator to at least get the inputs together so that we can have a discussion at the next meeting. Would that be the path you'd like to go down?
That's the way I would like to go. Is that okay with you guys? Then what I would ask is that we definitely put it on the agenda, or keep it on the agenda, with the goal of getting it off the agenda next time we meet. But that does require all of us getting on that sooner rather than later, not waiting until, the Tuesday before we meet, and giving Daryl any feedback that you have. Even if you don't have any, just send them and say, I'm good, and that's fine too. And then we'll get it soon enough that we can digest it and we can have a good discussion about it and finalize it and get it off the docket. Okay?
Yeah, and process-wise, I'll just put the inputs there and we'll discuss them at the open
Nothing will be
meeting.
agreed upon via email. It'll just be a the conduit of
Yeah, just
of
so I can collect them
feedback,
together.
then that'll bring us something that we can, get our hands on for the next time we meet, okay? Just do like a review. So if you guys can just take care of that, that would be much appreciated. All right, superintendent's report. We're doing clean
Really
sheet.
quickly, yeah, we're going to go through this rather fast. October 1st enrollment, interesting that when I looked at September enrollment, and that's not the official day, but for me it's important to figure out how many students we have. I said at that time we were up 4, but October 1st to October 1st, we're actually up 13 students from the previous year. And again, our enrollment fluctuates throughout time and during the months even. One thing that I just wanted to address quickly is one area that I noticed when I first took over the superintendency here is we had various grade sizes, and which was really unhealthy if you continued doing that without opportunities to do something different. Sometimes you don't have opportunities, but we did. So we stabilized those grade sizes so that now we have a pretty good idea of what we need at each grade level to run consistent staffing from year to year. If you don't do that, you have small waves of students that are coming through, and quite often in K-5 you keep moving your staff around, which isn't the best thing to do educationally. It works, but we're trying to build a solid continuum. And so if we have a grade 4 teacher, we want to continue to build that grade 4 teacher, not have them teach grade 4 for 3 years, and then all of a sudden teach grade 2 for a year, and then put them back in grade 4, put them back in grade 3. So we've taken care of that. When we look at these demographics, though, through time, it's going to be interesting because Littleton is at a spot in its evolution, so to speak, where I feel very strongly that the statistics that we see out there on a national level may not be indicative of what Littleton is or what Littleton's going to be, because they run these statistics on very tight variables that really don't exist in many communities. We're a community that has a 40B project. We're a community that keeps getting accolades about our programming in schools, and parents are consumer wise in this day and age. And that, in my opinion, is going to impact the number of students that we have in our school district. So if you look nationally, they would probably say, like any town, that our enrollment is going to decline, because that seems to be the trend across North America, except in the urban areas that are growing, or you have a state that has an economy that's just jumping. But other than that, there is a trend where our birth rate's decreasing as a nation. But what at times these statistics don't take into account is the economic conditions, or the local economic conditions that may influence enrollment. So I just want you as a school committee and as a public to realize that the predictions in the future are going to be a little more difficult. And I can't foresee decreased enrollment. I have waiting lists every year for students to come into our district on school choice. So I just wanted to throw that out there as we try to map our future in terms of staffing and programming, etc. So I'm pleased that we're up 13 students. We had many more come in than that, but we also have transiency with people moving away, relocating for new jobs, etc. And it sometimes balances out, but this time we were 13 students. So that's where we're at for enrollment. NWEA, very quickly, the NWEA assessment is so powerful because it allows us to see where our students are in an academic sense, in a subject area. So we may have a student in grade 8, for example, who is performing in math at a college level. And that allows us to tailor programming toward that child. And we may end up to a point in time with the technology that we have in our district to create avenues for students that have those abilities to take part in classes at the high school without physically being there, or perhaps physically being there. Years ago, I had a school where we used multi-paced instruction. And it was grade designated, but we tailored programming towards students. So I had students in grade 7, for example, that were taking ELA in grade 10. And we were able to do that. I had high school certification as a principal, and it was a middle school, which helped, and I just used the high school as a principal of as the vending organization to allow credit. But it was amazing at how our students moved along this continuum when they had the opportunity to master material, and it was so motivating. So I can see NWEA as we move forward working in that direction. And it also, for students that are struggling, gives us some great diagnostic information to use in terms of teaching strategies, et cetera. And unlike the MCAS, where we don't get the results until the next year, we get them instantaneously. So I'm so excited about NWEA, and again, when you come into a new district, you have to sell your beliefs, and you don't just plop them down and put something like this in, because it takes buy-in. And I'm just very, very pleased that we have the buy-in that we need to make this work. Looking forward to moving forward with this program. And it's online, and our students, very proud of them. They logged on to the online testing very, very quickly, and were adept almost immediately. It was really nice to see. That brings me to the end of the superintendent's report.
Interested is our regular agenda item for interested citizens. Said your piece, thank you. Subcommittee reports, PMBC.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Budget subcommittee, we have set our calendar. We will be meeting basically every other Tuesday, starting this Tuesday.
Yep.
And so we'll have more to update you guys on as we get this process off the ground. Policy subcommittee?
Yeah, hold on. So I'm working myself through the D policies, which are the financial management, fiscal management policies there. What I'm going to try to do is set up for the first and second meetings of November to try to have the first reading and second reading of a batch of policies. So I'm working I work with Kelly to get on his calendar so that we can go through them there, and then I'll try to work the next batch so that we try to wrap them up Christmas to the first of the year so that they'll stay out of the way of the budget pieces there. So that'll be my goal on those there. So probably in a few weeks we'll have a batch of 30 or so policies coming up.
All right. We will need an executive session regarding the LEA contract. But before we take an adjournment for that, does anybody else have any other business that we need to talk about?
Can I just follow up on Kelly's comment on the assessments there? And you didn't say it, but what I heard, this also, you'll be looking at ways of making age-appropriate advancements for them, not just grade level appropriate there, because just because they're performing math at a 12th grade level, for example, they're not probably ready to be in a 12th grade classroom.
No.
No, I mean, I think that's, I heard that, I just wanted to say that there.
But I also think that, one of the advantages that we have is, there were ways of identifying gifted children since probably, the first kindergarten caveman class. Exactly. But a lot of times it was awkward, and that's why it was so infrequent that it was. But now it's like you talked about conceivably having them take a high school class without being necessarily going to high school. Hey, they could take a high school class without even being part of our district necessarily, or other ways of there's other way myriad more opportunities to do that. So I think it's a pretty exciting thing to start to think about. We could keep a child in the district for all 12 years and still challenge her to the point where she never would want to leave anyway when we finally kick her out. If that's what it came down to. So, very good. Chuck?
Yeah, I just want to caution us. We all do it. You guys did it during your presentations. I know that we all do it. You just did it with the NWEA. A lot of folks at home have no idea what we're talking about half the time, because we throw acronyms out there, and I hear it all the time. What is this? Whatever it is, DESE, DESE, NWEA. We do it a lot. I don't know if there's something we can do with LCTV where Kirby can be ready on the ready with the acronyms, and he can scroll it across the bottom or something. I don't know. I just want to put that up there, just,
That's a really good point.
maybe we look at the presentations ahead of time, and we can help Kirby out, so he can have those prepared, so we can scroll them across for the folks at home, or
Or
we
just
can
a
be part.
glossary that we attach to the.
No, I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
kidding.
no, that's.
A glossary you attach to the packet.
Easily found.
Because
So
we use
that-
DESI all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And not everybody knows what it is.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I mean, we live it, so
Yeah.
we know what it is, but the NWEA is the Northwest Evaluation Assessments.
Northwestern
which-
Evaluation.
Evaluation Assessments, which is a nonprofit organization that works with districts across the country to improve learning for all students. And that it's something that we're engaged in, and I agree with you. I think it's something that could be great for us.
Are you working for them now?
Don't tell Maureen. But there's a lot of the acronyms that we throw in. I wrote that down a long time ago.
I appreciate that. You're right, you're absolutely right.
It's way up there with a star on it. MAP, I mean, we threw a few of them out tonight, and I just want to caution all of us, and if there is another way that we can do it to make it easier for the folks at home to follow along and not gloss over when we're doing presentations.
We should teach them to their kids, and then when the kids come home, they'll start
Hey,
using them
maybe
over
that's
dinner time.
what we do.
I don't know a kid that knows NEASC.
It's time
what
off of
NEASC
learning.
means.
All right, anything else?
Oh, I do have something else.
What?
Sorry, it's just what I do. We, as a group, agreed that we needed to have a conversation about turf fields on our property.
I believe that we're going to put that on the next agenda.
We certainly
I
can.
believe they want to come back to us as a
Great.
group.
I just wanted
So
to put it
that'll
out there. I want to
be-
make sure that we are
That'll be on there. And that's
looking at
in
it.
2 weeks, which is still another 2 weeks prior to town meeting, so we'll have a good meeting about that.
Has somebody invited me?
Yeah. Sorry, the audience.
Can I have
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Have you eaten dinner yet, Lee?
I'll be quick, it's 2 seconds. I forgot, this is for CPAC. I forgot. We are having our next CPAC meeting is on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, which is October 14th. It is the day after the holiday. We, at the meeting, part of the meeting is a brief meet and greet of some of the new special ed staff to our district this year, as well as then the school psychologists are going to do a brief presentation on executive functioning and what that means, and how they assess it, and different interventions that they use in our district. So, and then following will be a brief CPAC meeting. So I just wanted to put that out there. We did send a notice to go out in the newsletters, but wanted to take the opportunity.
What does CPAC stand for?
You're right, Special Education Parents Advisory Council. So, but it really is for all parents, and, you know, anybody can come, it's for the community. So even if you're just a parent of a regular ed student and you want to know about executive functioning, or you want to meet the school psychologist, come to the meeting. It is at the high school, at the library seminar room, and it's going to start at 7 o'clock, which is a little earlier than usual on Tuesday for the meet and greet, and then 7:30 the presentation will start. So,
Excellent.
Thank you.
thank you for letting me do that.
Great. Alex?
Just going back to the turf fields, I thought we had stated at the last meeting if they would approach us, or we would allow them to wait to approach us.
Yes,
Have
and
they
they,
approached us?
yes, they want to
Okay.
get on the agenda.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
they
the
want
part
to
I
get on the
missed.
agenda.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Great.
Okay.
I mean, I just found that out today, so, and I let Kelly know by email that we will put on the agenda. We'll get more details, so you guys will see on the agenda what we're talking about.
The motion for executive session would include LEA, the Littleton Secretaries Association, and the Littleton Educational Assistants Association. So there'll be three of them.
I think we can just say contract negotiation, and then the minutes of the executive session will reflect the discussion. Okay? All right, you ready?
Motion. She got it. Motion to adjourn from open session to enter into executive session for the purpose of
With
contract.
no intention.
With no intention of reopening.
Returning to.
Returning to open session for the intention of contract negotiations. That's usually it.
Second. This is a roll call vote. Mike Mazzoni?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Zero?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
I need to learn that one sometime.